Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about What If Deku Was the Shadow Hero Part 1. If you guys enjoy this What If and want to see Part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story, the 𝗵𝗃 from Wattpad. So let's start the video. Third POV. Izuku Midoriya was a child of misfortune he would describe. Izuku knew of love and happiness from the age of 1 to the age of 4, but when he reached that age of 4 and arrived at the doctors, he only knew of pain and suffering from that day forth. His parents Inko Yagi and Toshinori Yagi started to forget about him. His younger sister turned on him and hated him. Izuku never understood why she did that, nor did he understand why his former best friends Katsuki Bakugo and Shoto Todoroki turned on him either. Izuku kept growing up each year with his birthdays coming and going without any fanfare from his family or former friends. Not even his mother's adoptive brother Shoyuta Aizawa comes around to see Izuku anymore. Izuku receives birthday cards from him every year still, but that is it. They don't even have a return address, so Izuku can't track him down to try and get help from him either, and that has made some depressing thoughts that his uncle didn't love him either and was only sending the birthday cards for appearance sake. Izuku had nothing to disprove his theory, so that is how he thought of his uncle. The years passed and Izuku had turned 8 and he couldn't take it anymore. He was so depressed from all of the ill treatment that he had fallen so low that Izuku had begun cutting himself, which only made things worse, even though Izuku believed it gave him a sense of control over himself and his pain. It was the only coping method Izuku knew of, since his parents never listened to him and refused to get him professional help the one time that he had asked to go see a therapist. Izuku remembered that day since it was only a few months ago. Izuku had walked into the living room and had asked his mother and father if he could see a therapist, and they looked at him and said he was fine and that he didn't need one and that he was over-exaggerating his issues. That was when Izuku started to hate his family. He couldn't believe that they told him that he was over-exaggerating his issues and that he was fine, and it only got worse at school when Izumi, who had overheard his request to his parents, told everyone that he wanted to see someone for his so-called issues. Everyone made fun of him and said that a therapist wouldn't fix his quirklessness. It was at that point Izuku started to cut, since he wanted some form of control over his life. However, half a year passed and he could no longer take it. Izuku was done with his so-called family when he overheard a conversation between his family. They were talking about starting Izumi's training for her to inherit Toshinori's quirk. Surprise, surprise. Toshinori Yagi is actually All Might, the #1 hero. Who would have thought that the #1 hero would neglect their child? Inko Yagi was also the #6 hero, Green Tornado, as well. What most was shocking was the inheriting a quirk part. All Might told Izumi all about his quirk called One for All, and that it was a quirk he received from his 𝗵𝗃, who also received it, and so forth. He had deemed Izumi worthy of inheriting the quirk, even though she had done so many injustices and twisted things like a bully and assault her sibling for just being quirkless. Now, speaking about being quirkless, Izuku had realized what Izumi inheriting One for All meant. It meant that All Might Toshinori Yagi was quirkless by birth. It meant that he knew what Izuku was likely going through. It meant that he had neglected his child for the same thing that had broken Izuku for the final time. As such, Izuku decided to run away. He gathered all of his belongings and his notebooks, and when everyone had gone to sleep, he slipped out of his window and ran. What he didn't know, though, was that the house was being watched that night by someone, and his entire life was about to change and take a wild ride. Izuku was running down the street and the figure was moving across the rooftops following him. Izuku just ran for roughly half an hour until he reached a beach. It was dead of the night and a bit cold, but Izuku had finally arrived at his destination. He had searched this place up before, and Izuku was planning to hide out on the beach, even though it wasn't the best place. He would use it to train and then go hunt for food during the day. However, as Izuku started to move some things around and prepare himself for the night, he heard a sound come from behind him, and he grabbed a metal pole near him and swung it with all the strength his feeble body had. However, the pole was caught, and in front of Izuku stood a tall man with white hair. Izuku felt as if he should know the man, but he couldn't remember ever meeting here. Izuku snapped out of his thoughts when the man spoke, and Izuku backed up as he dropped the pipe and was on guard and expecting to be beaten as everyone else does to him. "Young man, why are you outside at this hour and why does it look like you are trying to sleep here?" the man asked, and Izuku looked up at him confused on why he hasn't beaten him. The man noticed Izuku's confusion and asked him about it. "Why are you looking confused? Did you expect me to do something or ask something else?" he asked, and Izuku nodded his head. "I'm quirkless." "What? Why aren't you hurting me as everyone else does? Even my parents neglect me, so why aren't you harming me since I am worthless?" Izuku asked as he glanced at the man between his arms, and the man's eyes widened. "What?" he stated in shock, and Izuku flinched back expecting to be hit, but he soon found himself pulled into a warm hug. Izuku didn't know why he felt safe with this man. He felt as if he could trust the man more than his family, so he decided to ask the man, "Mister, why do I feel safe with you? Safer than I do with my family. As if I know you." Izuku asked, and the man chuckled. "Well, we have met before, but you wouldn't remember me." "No, you wouldn't, and I am sorry for that, my son," the man said, and Izuku's eyes widened and he pulled back trying to figure out what the man just said. "You heard me right, Izuku Yagi. No, Izuku Midoriya. You are my son, and I am sorry I haven't been here for you. I didn't return when Inko got together with Toshinori Yagi since I thought she and you would be better off, but it seems I was wrong." The man said, and Izuku asked for his name and he told him. "Son, my name is Hisashi Midoriya," Hisashi stated, and Izuku nodded his head. Izuku then asked what he was going to say before he corrected Toshinori's name, and Hisashi said it was nothing. "I'm assuming you were about to say All Might," Izuku said, and Hisashi's eyes widened and confirmed. "I know. I heard them talk about their hero work with Izumi and, his quirk, if you know what I mean, though I don't know if you do," Izuku said, and Hisashi chuckled. "I do, son. I do know far more than you know. How about I explain who I truly am once we get out of the cold, since I need to explain why I wasn't around and how I know All Might. So let's get you to my hotel room," Hisashi said as he reached his hand and pulled Izuku onto his shoulders. "Oh, what are you doing?" Izuku asked, confused on why he was on his father's shoulders. Hisashi raised an eyebrow. "I'm giving you a piggyback ride. I'm assuming All Might has never done it for you. I will make sure you enjoy the life that you should have, son," Hisashi said as he started to walk away from the beach after grabbing Izuku's bags. Izuku asked why he was staying in a hotel, and Hisashi told him why. "I actually live in America right now. I only came back to look at Inko and you from afar. I do it once a year on your birthday, and by the way, happy early birthday since it's tomorrow in a few hours," Hisashi said as Izuku remembered that it indeed was tomorrow and he would be 9 now. He thanked his new, or rather old father, and they soon arrived at the hotel room. They went up to his room and Izuku liked the view from the room. Then Izuku noticed that they were in Tokyo. "When did we get into Tokyo?" Izuku asked, confused since they did not walk that long, and Hisashi laughed a bit. "You fell asleep for a short period and I teleported at that moment to Tokyo. You just didn't notice since you were so tired. How about I explain my past and everything about me in the early morning, and you can decide if you want to stay with me or not because of my past. My past has some issues that you will need to know about. If you don't want to stay with me, I will ensure you are set up with someone else and will have a stable life. No matter what, I will ensure you live a better life, so let's sleep for the night, okay?" Hisashi asked, and Izuku nodded his head since he was sleepy. "Well, there goes stranger danger, and all since I have zero proof expect my gut telling me you're my father. Don't RPE me in my sleep now," Izuku said as he finished changing clothes and slipped under the covers. Hisashi's eyes widened at his son's statement and were flabbergasted at his son's lack of danger sense. "We will so talk about that statement in the morning," Hisashi grumbled as he opened his laptop and wrote some emails to his lawyers in America to get working on paperwork for Izuku. Hisashi was also glad that Inko never legally declared him dead, since that left a huge loophole for Hisashi to exploit. Inko never legally divorced Hisashi, and the marriage had happened in America due to him taking her there for it. He had ultra motives for doing that, like if he ever wanted to take Inko and just leave everything behind, which he had planned to do when All Might had attacked him that day. As such, the divorce has to happen in America, and he also has American citizenship. This also meant Izuku had American citizenship as well, but the Japanese government didn't know about Hisashi and Inko being married since it happened shortly before Izuku's birth, and they hadn't had time to transfer the document to Japan for them to recognize it. As such, Inko could legally marry in Japan, but this meant she voided the marriage in America, and he would get full custody of Izuku in the American court system due to her fidelity that she committed and Izuku also being an American citizen with Japanese citizenship. Thank God I never got her American citizenship, or else this would be harder to do. Hisashi thought as he requested his lawyers to prepare everything to get the courts to void his marriage and grant full custody of Izuku to Hisashi. Unknown to everyone, Hisashi was actually a very successful businessman and had an empire back in America. It was called the Midoriya Enterprises and was the #1 business. Everyone wanted a piece of the company and many have tried to marry him, but he never remarried since he didn't want to. Everything was actually willed to Izuku already, but now it would be easier for Izuku to take control of everything since he will be involved in it. Third POV. Izuku felt so comfortable. He felt so relaxed and safe. He realized he hasn't felt like that in a long time during his sleep. Then he realized and wondered how he was feeling like that when he should be in a dump right now on the beach. I was found by someone who claimed to be my father. Izuku thought as he pushed himself up quickly and looked around. Then he felt himself being pulled straight back down onto the bed. Go back to sleep since you only slept for 6 hours. You need a minimum of 8 since you are a growing boy. Hisashi grumbled as he pulled Izuku in close to him against his chest, and Izuku didn't know what to do. He's never been hugged since the age of 4. Good. It feels so warm. Izuku thought as the warmth from Hisashi made him fall right back to sleep without him even trying to. Soon a few more hours passed and Izuku woke up to a smell of food. Then his stomach grumbled and he was embarrassed. Hisashi came out of the sweet kitchen and smirked at him. I hear you are hungry. Come enjoy the food. Hisashi said as Izuku got out of the bed and cautiously made his way to the table and looked confused. What do I do? I'm not used to eating with others. I've always had to make my own food and I had to retreat to my room since I couldn't eat in the dining room since they would always ask why I ate so much food when I barely ate anything at all. Izuku's state and Hisashi had to control his anger at Inko. How the F is that the same woman I fell in love with? Dear God, brother, I am said with the 8th user of your quirk. Hisashi thought as he put the food on the plates on the table and picked Izuku up and put him into the seat. It's okay to sit with me and eat. Just enjoy and let me know if you want more. We need to ensure you get a proper diet in you moving forward so your body can make up the growth it has missed out on due to their neglect. Hisashi stated and Izuku thanked him for the food and slowly ate and had a bit of territorial aspect with his food that Hisashi noticed. He's likely had to defend his food from other kids that wanted to cause him problems in school. That will need to be worked out of him with time. I need to make sure he sees a therapist. Hisashi thought. Soon they finished eating and Hisashi cleaned the food as Izuku just sat there. Hisashi then gave Izuku a glass of water and himself some as he sat down and looked at Izuku. Okay, first. In the future, don't go with strangers that claim to be family. You are lucky that I am actually your father, but besides that, I promised you the truth of my past. Hisashi said and Izuku just smirked with a toothy grin. Hisashi just rolled his eyes at the toothy grin. Good. Just like my brother with that grin. Hisashi thought. So, God, you are likely going to hate me for this, but no, I don't do it anymore, Hisashi said and Izuku just looked at him and spoke. I doubt it can be worse than you being all might and neglecting your stepson who is quirkless when you were quirkless as well, or being a mother and neglecting the son but doting on the secondborn and forgetting the firstborn. My standards are quite low, so just shoot. Izuku said with a blank face that Hisashi had an urge to laugh. Dear God, you have had to mature quite quickly due to your situation. Hisashi muttered and Izuku nodded his head. Hisashi decided to start the very beginning. I guess let's start with One for All and the full story of it since I am connected to it. There once were 2 brothers during the dawn of quirks. The older and the younger brother were close. So close, but yet they turned against each other. The older brother decided to gather forces together and work against the government since they were not protecting the quirked individuals, but soon the old brother got twisted and wanted power for himself. He wanted control and his quirk allowed control. He used his quirk for evil and gathered his forces and waged war during the dawn of quirks. This older brother's name was lost to time for most people and he was soon called by his quirk name 𝗷𝗵𝗏. His quirk allowed him to take, give and combine quirks at his will and he used this to control people through fear. The younger brother opposed him and was thought quirkless at the time. The older brother thought that if he kept him safe in his twisted mind and forced a quirk on him, then the younger brother would join him. The younger brother was locked in a locked room for a while, but in the end, he opposed the older one with the quirk that was granted, but what the older didn't know for a while was that the younger brother quirk merged with an unknown quirk inside of the younger ones. It became a whole new quirk called One for All. That is how that quirk came to be created and transfer through 8 different people, with the 8th being All Might. Hisashi said as he stopped and took a drink of water and then looked at Izuku, who was listening carefully. Now you might wonder where I come into this. Well, I am the retired villain of Japan known as 𝗷𝗵𝗏 and I am over 200 years old and you were also not born quirkless. Hisashi stated and watched Izuku's expression change from many things. Shock, sadness, confusion and anger. Did you take my quirk? Izuku asked and Hisashi nodded. But Izuku asked in a tense tone as a few tears leaked out. Because I was afraid you would hurt yourself with it. It's an advanced version of mine and it activated right after 𝗵𝗲𝗃𝗁, which a baby having a quirk that could take, give, combine, and copy quirks that would be dangerous. I had intended to give it back but All Might found me soon after your 𝗵𝗲𝗃𝗁 and I got damaged and hurt in the fight. I almost died from it and I'm still not fully recovered from it. The quirks that I stole over the 200 years are what keeps me alive. I can give you your quirk back right now if you want. Hisashi stated and Izuku nodded his head and Hisashi touched Izuku's head and he felt pain, but it was less painful than all of the beatings, so he didn't scream. I'm impressed you didn't scream, Hisashi said, and Izuku said he's had worst, which made Hisashi pale a bit at that. Hisashi really wanted to hunt down the people that had hurt his son. Well, in that fight I had also done damage to All Might. It's why he is so skinny, which I'm proud of now, wondering what I know. Hisashi said with a smirk on his face. So, you're retired now from your villain affairs? Izuku asked and Hisashi nodded his head. Indeed, I don't do anything in the underworld anymore. I do still have contacts that feed me information about important attacks or things that happen so I can keep myself up to date, but I focus mostly on the American underworld and not Japan. I'm not a wanted man in America and I'm only wanted in Japan since that is where I did my acts. Also, All Might thinks he killed me all those years ago. I am now the business owner of Midoriya Enterprise, which is the #1 business of America, which means I'm extremely rich, which considering I had 200 years to amass wealth means a lot of money. Hisashi joked and Izuku laughed a bit as well. So, if I wanted to be a hero still, even with what All Might did to me, would you be cool with it? Izuku asked a bit shyly. Not in Japan, no. In America, sure, since that is where we are going. I also have connections with the American Hero Commission and government that knows my secrets of being old as hell and being 𝗷𝗵𝗏. As long as I don't go stealing a ton of quirks from normal citizens and only criminals, then they won't bug me and I can live as I want to. They would be interested in hearing about me having a son that wanted to become a hero. Hisashi stated and Izuku smiled greatly. Though he had a problem. But I don't want to make people quirkless. Izuku said and Hisashi rolled his eyes at his son. You seem to have forgotten your quirk is 𝗷𝗵𝗏 advanced. You forgot yours has the ability to permanently copy a quirk without stealing it. You have to be in prolonged contact for about a minute or so from what I could tell, but you could likely train that down. Anyway, I have 200 years worth of quirks that you could copy from the first time around. After that, once you get a provisional license or during hero training, you could copy from thugs, criminals, villains, and anyone else that you run across in the hero field. Hisashi stated and Izuku's eyes widened at that and smacked his head. That is when Hisashi noticed something red under Izuku's sleeve and he grabbed Izuku's arms and pulled the sleeve down and went pale at what he saw. Oh, son. When did you start? Hisashi asked. Izuku looked down in shame. It's the only way I could have some control. They wouldn't let me go to a therapist. I needed control of something in my life. Izuku said as he broke down in tears, and Hisashi moved to him and pulled him into a hug and rubbed his back. "It's going to be okay. Just promise me if you ever feel like you need to cut, then come to me. No matter what I am doing, I will stop it for you and we will talk. Even if I am on the phone with someone. Nothing is more important than you." Hisashi stated, and Izuku nodded his head. "I will have you set up with a therapist that knows all about my past when we arrive in America. He works for me for quite a few years and can be trusted with secrets." Hisashi said, and Izuku thanked him, and Hisashi said it was okay, and it's only the start of the love and care that Izuku would receive from now on. Soon they calmed down enough and moved back to the bedroom and sat down on the bed and just hugged each other and bonded a bit more. "When are we going to leave Japan? I don't want us getting stuck here once they noticed I'm gone, if they haven't already, which is doubtful in my opinion." Izuku asked as he laid pressed against his father's chest, listening to his heartbeat, which made Izuku calm down so much. Hisashi thought it over and decided they would leave that afternoon. "I'll cancel the last meeting I had scheduled since I was in Japan. I can do it via remote location and just tell them someone important came up that required me to return to America ahead of schedule, so they won't complain. Also, far as I can tell, they indeed haven't noticed you yet. It's Saturday right now, and I'm doubtful they will notice until Monday, when the school should call to report that you didn't show up for classes." Hayashi stated, and Izuku nodded his head. After resting for a bit longer, they decided to get up and changed as Hisashi called the private plane to get ready to depart early. Izuku played around with feeling his quirk inside of himself, and he was adapting a bit to it and the feeling of it. After about 2 hours, the plane was ready and they headed off to the airplane. "You own a nice plane, Dad," Izuku said, and Hisashi chuckled, and Izuku wondered what was funny. "Do remember, you are my son, meaning you own all of this as well, since you are the only child I've had in 200 years. I never got with anyone outside of your mother. Now I wondered what pulled me to her in the first place with how she turned out. She and you are the reason I decided to retire, but now I wonder if it was just fate wanting you to be born and fall into my care instead of me and her really being together." Hisashi stated, and Izuku just stayed silent and was a bit sad that his dad has been alone for so long. Izuku hugged his dad and said, "Don't worry. I am going to be here now for you. You won't be alone anymore." Izuku said with a smile as he hugged his father, and Hisashi smiled with a tear down his eye. "Oh, you remind me so much of your uncle. You two act so much alike. I can't wait to see what type of man you grow up to be," Hisashi said as he rubbed Izuku's head and buckled Izuku in for the takeoff and sat across from him. Soon they were in the air within 30 minutes and would be in America in about 14 hours or so. After about 3 hours into the flight, Izuku saw Hisashi pull out a laptop and start his meeting. Hello Mr. Yaoyorozu. Apologies for canceling the in-person meeting. Something came up that requires me to leave Japan early, as I'm already back on the flight to America," Hisashi said, and Izuku recognized the other person's name. It belonged to one of the wealthiest families in Japan, but they had nothing on his father's wealth or power. "No issues, Midoriya. It's quite all right, though I hope everything goes well for you," the man said, and Hisashi nodded his head, and they started to talk about the business deal for the next hour or so. Soon Izuku's stomach rumbled and Hisashi heard it. "Sorry, Mr. Yaoyorozu, 1 second, Hisashi said as he stood up and grabbed some food from the small kitchen area and made a sandwich and some fruit, and then gave it to Izuku. "Son, here is some food. Eat up. We will get your health checked by the doctors when we return to America, so we can make sure you are getting everything your malnourished body needs," Hisashi said, forgetting the business video chat was still going, and then he heard Mr. Yaoyorozu asked him what he just said about a son. "Hisashi, did I just hear that you have a son?" Mr. Yaoyorozu asked, since he was an old friend of Hisashi, though he had no knowledge of all the past things he did. "Yes, you did. Doubt you would pretend you didn't hear that, though, would you?" Hisashi asked with a roll of his eyes at Mr. Yaoyorozu on the other side of the screen. "No. I won't. When have you had a son?" Mr. Yaoyorozu asked. "I've had a son for 9 years now. I was separate from my family for years since I had that accident, and when I returned I found my soon-to-be ex-wife with another man and just stayed away. I just found out last night that my horrible soon-to-be ex-wife and her new husband in Japan at least have neglected my child. 𝗬𝗲𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗲's father name that I am making up. They neglected him, and their child that is almost a year younger would assault him since he was assumed quirkless, which is bullshit. Everyone. God, I don't want to talk about it. Hisashi said with anger in his tone that 𝗳𝗵𝗲 picked up. I understand. If we ever get the chance, we should introduce our children as they might become friends, since being from well-off families makes it hard to find trustworthy friends that aren't after your money. Mr. 𝗳𝗵𝗲 stated, and Hisashi said he would consider it for the future since he would be making sure Izuku is healed before trying to introduce him to people. Soon, Izuku fell asleep and just slept through most of the flight. Third POV. Izuku was currently in a nightmare, or what he would describe as hell. He was living through his memories of his life up to that point, and of course, it was literal hell on earth for him due to all of the physical and verbal violence that Izumi Yagi, Shoto Todoroki, and Katsuki Bakugo had shown him over the years. This nightmare also included all the bullying he received from the other students as well, and the fact that the teachers did nothing when they saw it. Soon though, he broke out of his nightmare with a happy thought of his father. Izuku woke up and looked around and realized he was having a longing to cut. He wanted to find something to cut with before the words from his father hit him from before. I promised him I would go to him. Izuku thought as he moved around the plane in search of his father and found him in the back on a video call. Izuku didn't want to interrupt him though, so he just stood there, but he made slight sounds that Hisashi with all of his quirks noticed and turned his head. Hisashi paused the video call sound from his end and asked Izuku what was wrong. You said to come to you when I want to. Izuku stuttered, and Hisashi got the idea. He quickly moved to Izuku and checked his wrists for any fresh wounds but found none. It seems his mind is forcing the promise to the front of his mind since I've shown him kindness. So he seeks me out due to it. It's a start to getting him on track to being healthy again. Hisashi thought. He then asked what caused the urges to cut, and Izuku explained he was in a nightmare of all of his memories. Hisashi nodded his head and pulled Izuku into his arms and went and sat down in front of the laptop with Izuku in his lap. The people on the other side were surprised to see a young child with their CO. The people on the other side of the screen were all of the board members for Hisashi businesses. They would operate the companies that he owned when he had to work on different things. Hisashi soon unpaused the sound so he could talk. Okay, where were we? He asked, and they were all silent. He raised an eyebrow before one of them asked who the young man was. Oh, this is the future CEO of Midoriya Enterprise. My son Izuku Midoriya. Hisashi stated, and everyone was in shock, and Hisashi just laughed at their reactions. One of the older members of the board spoke up and asked him when he had a son. Hisashi sighed and looked at Izuku, who had fallen asleep against his chest. He just turned 9 today actually, or yesterday. Time zones and all. Anyway, he is my biological son I had with my wife, who I am now divorcing. She got together with another man after my injuries. You all know that I received it 8 or so years ago. I come to Japan near his birthday each year to just look from afar, and I found him running away from my soon-to-be ex's house at night. Turns out what I didn't know was that he was being abused and neglected. Just because he was falsely diagnosed as quirkless. He has a stepsister who physically bullied him with other people in Japan since they don't look good on quirkless people, and his mother and stepfather just completely neglected him. His mental health and physical health aren't good right now, so it will be a bit of time to get him to have self-worth and all, but I'm already seeing positive signs with him just receiving kind treatment from me. He's actually pretty diamond smart since I've looked over some of his notes, and he defiantly takes after me in intelligence. Hisashi said as he picked up one of Izuku's notebooks about heroes and their quirks. The board members nodded their heads and asked some more questions. Sir, will he be attending school or receiving homeschooling? I'm asking since several of us have children that attend the private middle school here in the city, and our sons could likely become friends with him and show him actual kindness since he hasn't received that type of care from those of the same age as him. Asked one of his senior board members, and Hisashi thought it over. I will likely homeschool for the remaining semester since it will be a start of a new school year next semester. It will also allow me to help his mental state more before introducing all of that to him. Hisashi responded, and they nodded their heads. We could also slowly introduce the kids. I'm assuming you will bring him to the office with you for a while. We could bring our children for a few hours before having them leave and slowly introduce them so he adapts to them. This way when he does start school he will already know people and feel more confident. Stated another senior board member, and Hisashi nodded at that and approved of. Soon they finished talking about Izuku and moved back to business. They talked about some new expansions to the business and taking over a support company that interested Hisashi. Midoriya Enterprise was more or less in any and all markets, since it has been around for almost as long as Hisashi himself has been for. The really senior board members knew the truth behind Hisashi since they have been with him a long time, but the younger board members only knew bits and pieces and would be told over time everything. Soon Izuku woke up again and realized he was sleeping in Hisashi's lap and tried to get out, but Hisashi stopped him. "I see you are awake. How are you feeling?" Hisashi asked, and Izuku stopped and thought. "Better. I'm still getting used to all of this, but having you around helps with the thoughts," Izuku said, and Hisashi nodded his head. He gave Izuku a banana to snack on since they were only an hour or so from landing. Soon the flight ended and Izuku realized where they were at. They were in the United States on the East Coast. More accurately, they were at the JFK International Airport in New York, New York. Now that I think about it, I didn't ask exactly where you live at, did I? I also never asked for 100% proof like a DNA test either before I accepted you as my father. But my standards have really fallen so low," Izuku stated, and Hisashi felt an urge to slap his forehead at his son's antics. "I'll have a DNA test done to show you are 100% mine, and I have your BRTH certificate and records in my home. You do have American citizenship after all, since I'm an American citizen, which I got over 100 years ago since it was useful. Also, in regards to where I live, do you know Central Park?" Hisashi said and asked. Izuku nodded his head and said he did. "Well, the city of New York and the state had some financial troubles at one point long ago in the past, about 120 years ago, so I made them a deal. I covered the debts that they had in exchange for ownership of the land between the East Doctor, West Doctor, and 102nd Street crossing. This gave me a lot of land, and I still let it be used by the public, and only where the house is built is blocked off. The house is located closer to the Lasker rink and the small pond area next to that. It's a bit in the woods, so we have privacy, but it's in that area," Hisashi said, and Izuku had a rough idea of where it would be located based on his father's description. Soon they got into vehicles that had appeared for them and were driven to the home, and Izuku could say that he really enjoyed the look of the home. It was a nice wooden log cabin type home that blended right in with all of the trees in the North Woods area of Central Park. Back view, front view, but not seen by anyone except anyone that gets close to the home. Living room, kitchen, dining room, sauna, Izuku's bedroom, Hisashi's bedroom, pool room, home gym, and workout space, training room for quirks or combat. Hisashi had shown Izuku around the entire house when he received a notification on his phone. "Let's head upstairs. There are a few people I want you to meet with," Hisashi said as they headed upstairs, and Hisashi had Izuku sit in the living room and wait as he went to the front door. Izuku just looked around and waited until he heard his father and some other voice come into the room. "Son, I want you to meet 𝗧𝗵𝗃. He's a loyal friend of mine that knows everything about my past. I've also given him a quirk that helps slow down his aging, so he is a bit older than he looks. He appears in his 50s, but he's actually about in his 70s. Hisashi said as he introduced 𝗧𝗵𝗃 to Izuku. "Hello young Sr. Izuku, I am 𝗧𝗵𝗃 and I perform almost all legal matters for your father over the decades that I've worked with him," Seth stated as he shook Izuku's hand. "If you ever run into legal trouble or trouble in general and you can't get a hold of your father, then I want you to call me and I will come to you and work on getting a hold of your father while I handle whatever issue you are in," Seth stated, and Izuku nodded his head as Hisashi gave Izuku a new phone since Izuku didn't have one. It had a handful of numbers pre-programmed into it like 𝗧𝗵𝗃's number. "Anyway, Hisashi, I've brought all the documents you will need to legally break the marriage with Inko since she's done what she has done. I'm assuming she's completely forgotten that she married you in America, and since you disappeared never thought of needing to break it, but since she married in Japan after you guys married in America, then your marriage is legally voided. We just need the court to recognize it as such. Also, I've got a kit here to take BLD from both of you since the court will want DNA proof that Izuku is your son, since if they are going to void your marriage and award you full custody, then they want 100% proof of him being yours. It would also help if we had evidence of the neglect. So I would like to have a person that is associated with the quirk copy Izuku's memories. This will allow them to provide it to the court, and it will allow the court to remove any rights of Inko to see custody of him in the future. It would also prevent the Japanese courts from doing anything as well, since it would put them in a tricky situation to try and grant rights to a neglectful parent even if she is a hero. Stated 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃. Izuku asked what about the secrets of his father since he now knew them, and Seth said that Izuku could willing block memories and that the quirk that would be used required him to consent to see any memories, so he would willing to bring the memories to the forethought and they would be copied. Izuku agreed to undergo this since it would also help his father and the therapists get a better understanding of what he went through so they could help him. They talked a bit more and Izuku's BLD was taken and so was Hisashi's and put into sealed containers. Izuku decided to ask what Seth's 𝗵𝗲𝗃𝗃 quirk was outside of the slow-aging quirk he received from his father. My 𝗵𝗲𝗃𝗃 quirk is actually the ability to understand all aspects of a document. It's a passive quirk, so it's always on. It makes me perfect for being a lawyer, but the weakness is that it had to be a physical document, so digital documents don't work. Sadly, that's a huge drawback in this day and age, but I get around it by printing all documents off and having a physical copy for myself. It's why I handle all the legal matters for your father, since I can ensure no one is trying to hide things in contracts that he will sign. Seth stated, and Izuku loved how it worked. Since you know about Dad's quirk, I'm assuming you know mine. Izuku asked, and Seth nodded his head. I'm assuming you want to copy my quirk. Seth asked, and Izuku nodded his head. Let's wait until you have more control of your quirk and you get some that will help you handle the drawbacks of mine. It gives headaches that you have to get used to or use medicine for. So find a quirk that helps counter the effects, and I will be fine with you copying it, since it will likely be too much for you, since even I found it hard to deal with when I was your age. Seth stated, and Izuku nodded his head while Hisashi chuckled at Izuku's longing to copy quirks already. The adults talked a bit longer before Seth got up to go handle the court documents and the DNA test. Hisashi took Izuku into the kitchen and they worked together and made a meal since it was getting a bit late. Tomorrow we will go and have you meet the therapist that you can tell anything you want to. After that, we can go and get you new clothing and items for your room. Hisashi said, and Izuku nodded his head and couldn't wait for the next day to come, unlike the previous week when he dreaded the next day coming. Though unknown to both of them, the Yagis, Bakugos, and Todorokis were all scrambling to try and find Izuku Yagi, but they will not have the luck of doing so. Third POV. As Izuku woke up on Monday and went about his day to see the therapist and getting things for his room and personal clothing since he was close to running out of clean clothing, the Yagis woke up on Monday not suspecting anything being wrong. Why would she, since she never paid attention to her brother any time outside of the beatings that she would give him? As such, she woke up and started about her normal schedule without even batting an eye at not hearing her brother, who was always silent, to begin with. Though something in the back of her mind nagged at her that something was off, but she didn't pay it any attention. Soon she finished eating breakfast and left to go to the school, where she met Bakugo and Todoroki on the way. Endeavor is good in this one, and Todoroki got the scar by spilling the teapot on himself when he knocked it over at a young age, meaning Ray never went to the mental ward. They walked towards the school together and Bakugo asked where the Deku was at so he could scare him, and Izumi said he was likely at school already since he was known to go early or arrive just before the bell to try and avoid them. Soon though they arrived at the classroom and sat down. They noticed Izuku wasn't in his seat and that he likely was going to come right before the bell. However, he never arrived. Izuku Yagi never came at the bell or even after it, and the teacher did the roll call and call for him, which he didn't answer. The teacher asked Izumi if he was sick or something, and she shrugged and said she didn't know. The teacher said that she would just ignore it for that day. This was typical because the teachers honestly didn't care at all. Why would they when they have let Izumi and everyone else hurt him for years and never stopped it? As such, the teacher moved forward and started the lessons, and the feeling that Izumi had inside of her that ate at her grew more and more as the day passed. All three of them were sitting together at lunch, and Izumi asked why they even started to bully Izuku in the first place. Todoroki spoke up and said it was because she didn't want him to get hurt since he refused to give up his dreams of being a quirkless hero. I think we should stop. We've gone too far. We're no better than villains attacking a civilian because we've even used our quirks to harm him as well. Izumi said, and both of the boys flinched at that statement. They thought it over and agreed that they should stop since they didn't want to ruin their chances of being heroes. They all agreed to treat Izuku better and stop calling him Deku, but what they didn't know was that it was too late. Their actions have consequences, and even as 8 and 9 years old their actions have caused damage that they can't be taken back. After school was over they all headed to the Yagi house and entered the home to find parents of all 3 children there. They were having an early dinner since Toshinori had invited them over since it had been a while since the last time all 3 families had gotten together. Have you seen Izuku? He didn't show up to school today, Izumi said as they entered the living room. This caused concern across everyone's face as Inko decided to check Izuku's room. I'm wondering if he is just sick and stayed in his room without us noticing when we went out today for work, Inko said as she went to Izuku's room to find him not in the room. However, she did find a note. She started to read the note before she fell to her knees and into tears. Her falling down to her knees caused everyone to get worried and they came rushing in prepared to face the situation. However, all they found was Inko holding a paper and crying. Toshinori tried to ask what was wrong as 𝗵𝗲𝗄 took the paper out of her hand and read it. His eyes soon widened in shock and he turned around and grabbed his son's arm. What did you 3 do? Also, what the hell did you 2 𝗵𝗄𝗄s do? This letter says these 3 idiots assaulted and bullied Izuku for years at the school and that you 2 neglected him. Explain right F now. 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗃 yelled as he looked at All Might while holding his son's arm. Shoto was scared shitless and realized their actions were about to be found out. This caused the other parents to read the letter and they were in shock as well as Toshinori soon took the letter and read it. He was in shock and tried to remember doing anything with Izuku but he couldn't. What have we done? Toshinori thought as he sat on the bed. He then looked around the room and noticed something in the trash can. He reached over and it was bandaged with BLD. He paled at that and saw razor blades with dried BLD on them. Ray saw them and gasped. Oh my god. He's cutting. You all drove him that far. Ray stated as tears went down her face. The kids were confused until they saw the blades and realized the implications of them. They pushed Izumi Yagi to start harming himself on top of all the harm they would cause him on a daily basis. Ray and Mitsuki started looking around the room and noticed clothing was gone. The letter only detailed what had happened to him and that he was done with the treatment. It didn't even talk about their heroes' identities or knowing about 𝗏𝗏𝗏, also they didn't know that he knew about it. The parents knew about their jobs and the quirk while the kids only knew about their jobs, with only Izumi knowing the truth of the quirk out of the kids. Though Izuku did learn of it which they didn't know about. Ray and Mitsuki brought attention that Izuku had clothing missing and that gave them a hint that he ran away. As such, All Might made some phone calls. Several calls went out to Principal Nizu of UA, Grand Torino, Sir Night-Eye, the detective, Recovery Girl, and Eraserhead, who was Inko's adoptive brother. After a few hours, they all arrived at the Yagi house to get a handle on whatever situation All Might had called about. So let's get this straight. You, Toshinori and Inko, neglected your son Izuku for years, all because he was quirkless. Then we also have the 3 idiotic children who believed it was best to stop Izuku's dreams of being a hero by physically and verbally bullying him for years as well. We also have the fact that he is most likely suicidal due to all of this, but we can confirm the fact that he physically harms himself, and last but not least we have the fact that he has run away and you don't know when. Sir Night-Eye stated out loud and the Yagis and the 3 kids nodded their heads. Everyone groaned at the mess of a situation that they have found themselves in, though Aizawa was downright sad. He decided to speak up though. Inko and Toshinori, he said, and they looked at him with everyone else looking at him. I'm telling you this right now. Once we find Izuku, I'm removing him from your custody and he will be living with me moving forward. Since you want to only dot on your daughter, that's fine because I will take care of him. Aizawa said with a glare, and the 2 of them flinched back but tried to argue that he is their child. I don't care. Moving forward, Inko, you are no longer family. Izuku needs more than what you 2 can provide. For him, Aizawa said as he got up and started to leave. I'm going to go out and search for him. Nizu, send me any useful information from them that might help me. Aizawa said, and 𝗍𝗂 said he would. Soon Aizawa was gone and they were all quiet. 𝗍𝗂 then looked at the kids and then at the parents before thinking. You kids are lucky. None of what you did is on your record. If it was, you wouldn't walk in UA doors at all. 𝗍𝗂 stated, and they stiffened up. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 scoffed. Shoto considered the recommendation. I was going to do no more. If you want in any hero school, do it under your own power and pass the general exams. 𝗵𝗃𝗲 said, and Todoroki nodded his head. The Bakugos were hesitant to even allow Katsuki to even go to hero school, but decided to allow it, but only after he goes through therapy. 𝗍𝗂 latched onto that idea and suggested that all 3 children should go to a therapist and anger management to ensure they fix themselves before UA. Let's be clear. I can't really stop you from applying since this won't end up on your records, and most of what you did is protected until you were 7. So, you are lucky. But I can, and I will make your time at UA a bit less enjoyable. Regardless of the outside of UA, you 3 will be required to see 𝗵𝗃𝗃 at UA during your time there, and you will be on a shorter leash overall since I will be putting you in Aizawa class if you somehow pass. This way he can enjoy himself and keep you 3 in line. 𝗍𝗂 said. They all nodded their heads at the conditions placed upon them. Soon the conversation moved towards how to start a search for Izuku, and this is where the detective took the lead of the conversation. As it stands, Izuku's case likely won't receive much attention, sadly, due to society's views on quirkless people. If you were to reveal that you're his father, then more people would search for him, but then there is also the danger of people holding him hostage if a villain finds him first. Either way has a disadvantage to it. The detective stated, and the Yagi family gripped their hands when 𝗵𝗃𝗃 spoke up. We could paint it as him missing, but that he is also a witness in a case. Which is kind of true, since I'm sure you are going to dig into the school for the stuff they allowed, and he would indeed be a witness for it. This way he can put more focus on finding him, and we can do it via my office instead of All Might's office. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 suggested, and 𝗍𝗂 agreed with that route. As such, Izuku would be painted as a missing child that is also involved in an important case that needs to be found. The detective nodded his head and made notes to set the case up like that with the 𝗵𝗃𝗃's agency so no one could question it in the future. All Might asked 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 if he would use his quirk to see if they would find Izuku, and 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 declined since it would only cement it. Though without All Might knowing, 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 did indeed use his quirk when he was going to leave and had placed his hand on Inko's shoulder. Soon the heroes and the detective left. Rei took her son home, and the Bakugos left as well, which left the heroes and the detective standing in the street as they got in the detective's car to drive off. As they were driving, 𝗍𝗂 asked 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 if he did indeed use his quirk. I see you caught me. 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 stated. 𝗍𝗂 asked if they would find Izuku, and 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 thought about it. Uncone for sure. I couldn't see the details as my perspective I was given was not great. I could tell it was in your office at UA, and some years had passed. Inko called Izuku's name in a sad tone, and there was another voice. It's been a while since I've heard Izuku's voice, so I can't tell you if it was his or not, and if it's years in the future then his voice would undergo some changes as well. I can tell that there was anger in the male's voice though. There was deep anger, which would be understandable if it was Izuku. He likely hates them and wants nothing to do with them if we did find him. 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 said, and everyone in the car just nodded their heads. They were silent for a bit longer before 𝗍𝗂 spoke up. All we can do is keep searching. I've never believed your quirk is 100% true. I've always believed it provides for the highest probability future but could still be changed depending on many people's actions. We just need to keep searching and be ready for whenever we find him, and make sure we provide him the love that the Yagis failed to do so. If he was at UA, it could mean that he attends UA as a general student or something, or somehow make it into the hero course. I will work on removing the quirkless rule since I've had plans to do it anyway, and this will just provide another route for him to be there. 𝗍𝗂 stated, and everyone nodded their heads. Soon their drive came to an end, and 𝗵𝗃𝗃 got out at his agency with the detective as 𝗍𝗂, recovery girl, and 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 took a cab from the agency to their own destinations. This began the search for one Izuku Yagi, though they wouldn't find him until he wanted to be found. Third POV. Several days have passed since Izuku had arrived in America, and it was now Thursday. Multiple things had happened, and they had also decorated his room a bit and gotten him new clothing. Izuku had also started talking to the therapist a bit and opening up slowly. The first session was tense and Hisashi had to stay in the room since Izuku didn't really want to let go of him once they arrived. Note, I'm BSing on some of the therapist SHT, so don't take any of it as reality. The therapist told Hisashi that it was a natural defense mechanism that Izuku had developed. Hisashi has presented himself as a safe home, as a protector that can wipe out any threats to Izuku, so Izuku is latching onto him for anything he finds uncomfortable. It's more of how a small child of a 2 or 3-year-old would act when they would be introduced to newer things that make them uncomfortable. They seek shelter behind their parents. Izuku is more or less doing that now as he didn't have safety growing up. Indeed, he has safety during 0 to 4, but after that his safety net crumbled and now Izuku was latching onto his new one in fear that it would leave him like how his parents neglected him last time. Hisashi was glad to have that information and could observe Izuku for any habits that would be concerning or that would show that he was acting younger than he was since he now had a safe home. The therapist said that some habits would likely show up, but they would go away the longer he felt safe, and Hisashi kept protecting Izuku from major threats or dealt with things like an actual parent should. So if someone tried to bully him, then Hisashi should step in and solve the issue, unlike his former parents. That will work a lot of the habits out of Izuku that he would develop that makes him appear as a younger child than he actually was. After the first session, they agreed twice-a-week sessions moving forward until the therapist thought Izuku was in a good state to lower the numbers. Of course, more could be added at any time. Outside of the therapy, the clothes shopping was more enjoyable for Hisashi in Izuku's view since Hisashi was enjoying dressing Izuku up in anything and everything he could find. Moving outside of both of those things and to more important things, we come up to the court case. 𝗧𝗵𝗃, Hisashi's lawyer for almost everything, called them up and informed them that the court wanted Izuku and Hisashi to both appear for the case since the court judge wanted to physically see Izuku. They were confused about why but accepted it. That is how they found themselves waiting outside of a courtroom with 𝗧𝗵𝗃, who was acting as the lawyer. They were soon called into the courtroom and stood with their lawyer. Izuku jumped in his father's lap since there were only 2 seats. The judge called for the court into order and there was an attorney representing the government and then their side since they were requesting something of the government, so they had a representative there. Let's begin. You may be wondering why I called you here, Mr. Midoriya. I wanted to physically see the said child that was being claimed to ensure that they were indeed real. I also want to use my quirk on him. My quirk allows me to tell if someone is telling the truth or not, but it's subjective to that individual person's knowledge. Are you willing to consent to this, Izuku? The judge asked Izuku, who looked at his dad. This is your decision, Izuku. Just know I will be here if you feel uncomfortable with any of her questions, okay? Hisashi said, and Izuku felt less tense after that and agreed. The judge said Izuku could stay there if he wanted to sit in the seat next to her. Izuku decided to go up to the seat. When did you first meet Hisashi Midoriya? The judge asked Izuku. He looked at her and started to answer. I first met him, as far as I can remember, on the beach where I had planned to sleep the night since I had just run away from my mother's and who I know now is my stepfather's home. But Dad knows me from birth since he was there the day I was born based on what he's told me. Izuku said, and the judge nodded her head. I have watched the memories that you brought to the front of your mind for the court officer. Can you tell me what your relationship is, or rather was, with the 3 children in the video? I want to confirm what was provided to me. She asked him, and Izuku explained who they were. She then asked how Hisashi has treated him so far and if he was being good to him. I don't know how to define if he was doing a good, really. Izuku said, and she asked for a bit of detail on that. I've only known pain and suffering, so anything outside of that is really better compared to that. Dad has taken me shopping for clothing, though I am sure he got far more enjoyment out of dressing me up in all different clothing. Izuku said, and they could hear Hisashi chuckle under his hand. He's also made me food when I always had to make it myself in the past. He's sat with me when I didn't want to be alone for the first therapy session since Izuku said as he stuttered on the last part. Izuku, it's fine if you can't say it. Do you want me to? Hisashi asked Izuku, who nodded his head. The judge looked at Hisashi in confusion. Your Honor. My son's mental health is really bad due to the treatment he's received from my hopefully soon ex-wife if you grant it. That family drove him to the point that he has started self-harming himself. He likely has a range of mental issues that we will be dealing with as we discover them with the therapist, but self-harm is currently known and self-confidence issues as well. Hisashi said, and the judge's eyes darkened a bit at what she heard. She asked Izuku if he was comfortable with showing his wrists, and he showed her, and she confirmed what she saw and made her notes. "Thank you, sweetie," she said to Izuku, who had a bright smile on for being thanked. The judge made more notes for a few minutes. "Izuku, do you think you would ever want to see your mother or stepsister again in the future?" she asked, and Hisashi knew why she asked this. It would determine how harsh the judge is on cutting any possible contact from Inko to Izuku if she ever found Izuku. As it stands, no. I hate them. I did nothing wrong and yet they treated me like that. I don't have plans to reconnect with them far as I am concerned since I have Dad to care for me now. The only thing I expect from them is for them to cause me pain, unlike with Dad," Izuku said, and the judge nodded her head. After a few more questions, the judge told Izuku he could return to Hisashi. "Thank you too for coming here today," the judge started off with and looked at Hisashi. "As it stands, you have provided enough proof that your marriage should be ended. I normally would require you to attempt to get in contact with the other party with reasonable attempts to have both sides present to end a marriage, but due to the fact that the other side has caused harm to a child that is involved in this case and said child has a hatred for the other party that I can confirm with my quirk, I cannot in good concise allow the other side to find the location of the child via the court's actions," stated the judge before looking at the lawyer for the government. "If the government has no opposition, then I will grant a nullification of the marriage with Inko Yagi, formerly 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 before she married the second man in Japan, even though she was married in the United States as Inko Midoriya," the judge said as she looked at the government lawyer. The lawyer shook his head and said they had no objections to the court order for that. Next was the part about Izuku. Outside of the marriage which did produce a child, this court hereby issues the following in regards to the child Izuku. This court finds that Inko Yagi, formerly Inko Midoriya, formerly 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃, is unfit to care for the child involved in this case, Izuku. We find that all custody will be awarded to Hisashi Midoriya. No child support or any monetary compensation will be awarded since it would involve contacting said other parties involved, which would endanger the life of the said child. This court also sees fit that a restraining order will be applied against Inko Yagi, formerly Inko Midoriya, formerly 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃, as well as Izumi Yagi. However, this court acknowledges that this restraining order has no effect outside of the United States of America. The judge stated and looked at Hisashi's lawyer, who accepted the terms, and the government lawyer, who accepted it as well. The judge then continued for a bit longer. This court also finds that Izuku is indeed a United States citizen even though he was born in Japan, which grants him Japanese citizenship. His father is an American citizen and Izuku is granted birthright citizenship alongside his Japanese citizenship, but this court requires the re-announcing of Izuku's Japanese citizenship to ensure that Japan's courts can't attempt to grant his custody back to Inko Midoriya in their jurisdiction in the event that he ever returns before he retreats the age of maturity in Japan, which is 18, the same as the United States age of adulthood. Is this agreeable to both parties?" asked the judge, and both sides agreed to it. This brought an end to the court case, and Izuku documents were verified and identification issues which would arrive at the Midoriya's home in a few weeks. "Congratulations, Izuku, on being formally recognized by the government as Izumi Midoriya moving forward," stated the judge, and Izuku thanked her. Soon they left the courtroom and the government lawyer approached them. "The identification papers will all arrive in 2 weeks or so at your home address. We have on file for you, Mr. Midoriya. The removal of his Japanese citizenship will be recognized by the United States, but we won't send it to Japan, which would alert them that he is here. We don't want All Might attempting to come here and starting an international incident over this, even though we would never agree to his demands since we saw what we did in the memories. He's also weakening as confirmed in the memories, so we see less value in agreeing to any of his requests that would harm Izuku since he plans to be a hero in the future. The commission president sends his regards and can't wait to see your son in the future when you bring him by," stated the government lawyer. Izuku was shocked that the man knew about All Might's form even though he blocked that portion out about his being All Might. Hisashi saw Izuku's confusion and explained. Remember, the commission president and a handful of people in the government are in the knowledgeable of my past and my quirk. Means they know All Might's quirk and his true name. When those that know me saw the case related to me, they send a lawyer who they read in on me and everything that I've done, which included All Might. This means they know about your quirk since I've told them that you want to be a hero, remember? Hisashi said, and Izuku nodded his head. As such, you have more value to the government than All Might, who is going to retire. You also will be a hero in America, unlike him who is in Japan. This means that you will be defeating crime here and helping the government, unlike he is, since he's going to have to retire in the next decade or so due to his wounds. However, you will only grow more powerful, so they will want to establish good relations with you, which they have done via this and making sure we have no issues with All Might or your mother. Hisashi said, and Izuku smiled at that and nodded his head. That's good, I guess. It means that I will have an easier time becoming a hero if I don't have to worry about hiding the actual quirk from the government. Izuku said, and Hisashi nodded his head since that was true. America wasn't like Japan with all of the discrimination against so-called villainous quirks. America had a slightly higher quirkless rate at 10% as well, so it wasn't so unnormal either. The Midoriya's quirk would indeed cause some fear since it was a shocking quirk, but the government was strict on discrimination laws as well, so Izuku would just need to deal with some bullies that would dislike him for his quirk itself, but overall he wouldn't face issues of becoming a hero since the government likes the idea of him being one, since he would be a powerful one that they could call for special missions. They also likely will want him to become a special agent hero. Hisashi thought. The Special Agent program helped train powerful heroes and sent their agents out on harsher missions that normal heroes couldn't handle. Sometimes killing was required, sadly, which Hisashi didn't want Izuku doing, but even a normal hero must kill sometimes to save people. As such, there wasn't much difference the frequency of hard missions and the possibility of having to kill being slightly higher due to the more difficult villains that they have to deal with that might need to be put down to ensure the public safety. Anyway, that was a concern for the future as the Midoriyas soon headed home for the day since the court case took a few hours and both Midoriyas were hungry now. Third POV. It's been about 4 weeks since Izuku had run away from his mother's care. They did find out that he was reported missing and was being searched for as a witness in an important case via the Endeavor Agency. The missing person report was filed about 3 days after Izuku had run away, since he ran away Friday night and he was gone all weekend and Monday as well. Izuku and Hisashi talked about it and both found it funny that Toshinori and Inko had decided not to reveal their hero identities and his connection to them, but they likely were using the reasons of villains would hold him hostage as the reason not to reveal it. However, that made Izuku just dislike them even more since they weren't willing to risk it all to find him even though he ran away. Hisashi had noticed Izuku's anger towards them one day and had decided to sit Izuku down in the study room a bit and talk about his anger. Izuku, I want to talk about your anger towards them, Hisashi stated, and Izuku tensed a bit up. You're not going to tell me to forgive them, are you? Izuku asked, looking at his father with concern. No, God, no. I'm just concerned that you are going to hold on to the anger so much that it leads you to make foolish decisions in your life. I don't want you to repeat the same mistakes I did where I became a villain. Your dream is to be a hero, so you will need to manage your anger into other outlets instead of directing it all towards them for their actions. It's okay to hate them, but to be angered about it and let it affect your actions is another thing. Do you understand what I am getting at? Hisashi asked, and Izuku sat there in silence for a few minutes. He looked at his father and nodded. I think I get what you mean. If I let my anger control my actions, I may do something I would come to regret and that I can't take back. That I might stoop to their level and be no better than them. Izuku said, and Hisashi nodded his head and was glad that Izuku had gotten the main message that he wanted to convey in having this conversation. You are correct. Now, how was therapy yesterday? Hisashi asked, and Izuku thought about it. Better. They gave me some coping methods I can use and some breathing methods to help me if I have panic attacks. It's getting easier to understand everything they did to me and my emotions surrounding it. Izuku said. Hisashi was glad the therapy was starting to pay off, and the behaviors that Izuku showed where he clung onto Hisashi almost at any moments had lessened with time. There were still some moments where Izuku just wanted skin contact with Hisashi and sought it out, which he provided, but overall Izuku was able to act independently more and more. I also wanted to see if you wanted to come with me to the Enterprise. I've stayed home since I've brought you to America, but I need to start making some appearances again at the business. I don't need to make an appearance every day, but it's easier to do some work in the office, and I also want to introduce you to the board members in person. I also know they would like to introduce you to their kids who would attend the same school as you, but they wouldn't be going to a hero school with you as far as I know, since most of them intend to just go into business. Hisashi stated, and Izuku thought it over and nodded his head. He kind of wanted to get used to being around kids his age again, since he would need to be social once again. Over the past week and a half, both of them have been starting Izuku's physical and quirk training in the gym and combat training room. The physical war aimed at making Izuku's body lean and compact, since it fit his body type more like Hisashi's. They also started training Izuku's abilities to copy, steal, give, and combine quirks. Hisashi, being Hisashi, was the perfect person to train Izuku, since Izuku could use a mountain load of quirks that Hisashi had on hand. Izuku could also learn to take the quirks, give them back, take multiple and combine them, break them apart again, and copy some quirks as well and destroy them if he didn't want them. Hisashi made Izuku take certain quirks that he was required to keep. The quirks that Izuku currently had, advanced all for one 𝗵𝗲𝗿𝗺 quirk. This allows the user to copy, take, give, and combine quirks. Currently, there is no limit to the number of quirks that the user can hold. It takes about 1 minute to copy a quirk with physical contact. Other actions can be done within seconds. Hyper regeneration. This allows the user to use stamina to regeneration their body and wounds. Stamina booster. The user's stamina is recuperated at x2 their natural body rate. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 telepath. This allows the user to send messages to people that he considers close to or who he considers family. Geolocation. This allows the user to acquire the general location within 100 feet of a person that they are thinking of. These quirks were the required ones that Hisashi wanted Izuku to never get rid of for any reason. Then there were some that didn't require explaining, like the regeneration and stamina booster. The familiar telepath was so he and Izuku could keep in contact with each other if they were separated or if Izuku was being attacked by anyone, since Hisashi did have a special permit license, just so the government didn't have to deal with him using his quirk to defend himself or against others like criminals if he wanted to take a criminal's quirk. He was forbidden from taking random citizens' quirks though, and was required to report any new quirk he gained, which Hisashi agreed with since they were so easygoing with him. American laws were a bit loose on quirk usage for self-defense, but you still couldn't freely use them every second of the day. As such, if Izuku was in trouble, then Hisashi could go help him. The geolocation allowed Izuku to find his father's or anyone else's location if he had a mental image of them in his mind. It also allowed him to find his own location, which he could then send via 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 telepath to Hisashi, who could teleport himself to Izuku. Izuku didn't take the teleportation quirk since it was a bit gross in his views. It made sludge come out of his mouth and teleport then. Hisashi told him he got a copy of it via an old doctor friend that he no longer is in contact with. Izuku did copy some quirks from his father to build his own quirk set as his father has. Izuku didn't think he wanted to be a highly publicized daylight hero and would likely work more at night. As such, Izuku started to build his quirk set to work around the idea of working at night or a shadow team. The first quirk of 200 years worth of quirks that he found in his father's arsenal was a quirk called 𝗏𝗏. 𝗏𝗏. This allows the user to communicate and order crows to do his bidding. Izuku could also connect his mind to the crows and see through their eyes. Though if the crows don't like him, then they can break free of his control through sheer willpower, though it's unlikely of it working. Knowledge. The user absorbs the knowledge of things once they come in contact with it. If they touch an apple, they know where it was grown from and what type of apple it is. 𝗬𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 combined quirk, pitch black and shadow minion. This allows the user to materialize any shadows with varying strength and form it to meet their needs. The user could make items like 𝗬𝗵𝗃𝗃 or weapons, clones made of shadows, wings out of shadows, or anything else that their mind can imagine. The user can even travel via the shadows since he is one with the shadows. Pitch black. This allows the user to control shadows, and the darker the shadows under control, the stronger they are. Shadow minion. The user is able to control their personal shadow and make it materialize as a physical form. Shock absorption. This allows the user to take kinetic energy and absorb it into his body and use it to boost their own strength. Velocity. The user can steal the kinetic energy from people and objects in motion to gain more speed while slowing the person or object down due to the stolen energy. Double strength booster. Grants the user of the quirk a doubling effect of their natural strength. The stronger the individual's body is, the stronger the doubling effect is of their strength. Color changer. This quirk allows the user to change the color of any hair on his body and allows him to change the color of his eyes as well. As such, Izuku had 9 quirks that he purposely wanted and then 10 with his 𝗵𝗃 quirk. Then once you had the 4 required quirks of his father, he would 14 quirks total to start out with. Izuku knew he would increase his quirks over time and wouldn't need to worry about not having a certain quirk to fit his needs, as he was sure he would meet people that he would copy from over time, and the copying doesn't cause any pain at all, so people wouldn't even know if he copied them except for him hanging on to them for a minute or so. Izuku has gotten good, but they so far found that he wasn't really able to decrease the copy time that he was required to go through so far. They would keep training it to see if it would decrease in the future, but it looked like it wouldn't as it stood. Anyway, outside of all of those things, it was now time for Izuku and Hisashi to head off to Midoriya Enterprises and for Izuku to be introduced to the children of the board members so Izuku could start getting reintroduced to children around the same age as him. Izuku would also be attending the next school year in about a few months once it started, but Hisashi wasn't concerned about Izuku's education level since he was already at a high school level. Izuku's already that far ahead due to not spending any time with friends or really playing outside due to bullies. As such, he spent his time studying in his room and improving his education in hopes that his parents would notice his intelligence, but they never did. As such, even though Izuku was still in elementary school, he was far ahead of everyone else, and by the time he started high school, he would likely be at the college level. Hisashi was debating on having Izuku just take a placement test so Izuku could focus on training and just interact with people his age at the business or out in public. I guess I will just need to talk to Izuku about it since I don't want to force him to spend all day at school and be bored. Hisashi thought as he focused on driving to the company headquarters location, which was only 30 minutes or so from the house, which was a good thing for them, to be honest. Third POV. Soon the 2 Midoriyas arrived at the company. Izuku was in a little suit that just made him look adorable in Hisashi's opinion. Izuku rolled his eyes at his father's look. I can imagine him thinking about buying a large amount of clothing to dress me up in again. You would think he is a woman with the amount of love he has with dressing me up in all different types of clothing. Izuku thought as he followed his dad into the building slightly behind him. Izuku decided he wanted to explore the place, and he already had an ID pass that would get him into any room he wanted in this place since he was inheriting it anyway, so Hisashi saw no need for Izuku to be restricted from any rooms. Also, the other children from the board members wouldn't be around until the later part of the day since they were all at school. Izuku sent a mental message to his father, "Dad, I'm going to explore the building since I don't want to sit in your office all day. I also want to get used to the building layout." Izuku sent the message via the mental quirk, and Hisashi sent a message back approving of his decision. As such, Izuku split away from his father right in the lobby and started his exploration. As such, no one knew in the building that Izuku was Izumi Midoriya, aka son of Hisashi Midoriya. Midoriya Enterprise headquarters. Overall, the building was a unique style, as it also had a lot of underground sections with most of the offices above ground with any testing rooms, quirk rooms, experiments, or anything else that they want to keep from competitors' eyes. Izuku had separated early from his father, so he honestly wanted to test the security of the building and see how far he could get inside without someone questioning him. As such, once he saw his father go up the elevator to his office, Izuku decided to slip right next to some workers and followed them into another elevator without them noticing him. He also hid his badge so no one would see it. The workers in the elevator did not notice him in the elevator with them, and Izuku rolled his eyes. Soon they came to a floor filled with desks, and Izuku followed the workers out of the elevator and into the room. Still, no one noticed Izuku or tried to stop him. After about 5 minutes of walking around, Hisashi had come to the floor since he knew Izuku was on it, and he wanted to see if anyone noticed his son yet. As Hisashi walked through the floor, all of the single women were gushing about how Hisashi looked and dreaming of marrying him since they believed he was single. Well, he is single now, but do they really think I would accept some random women as my new mother? F that. Izuku thought as he rolled his eyes at all of the women acting like they were acting. Izuku decided to slip into the elevator and go to a different floor. He sent his father a message about playing a game of hiding and seek, where Izuku goes to all the different floors and see if a worker notices him and what they do, since it was not common for random children to be in the building. Hisashi agreed since he was interested as well. As Izuku made his way through the various floors, he was noticed by several people, but no one actually stopped him even though he had no visible badge on him. It got to the point that Izuku was getting a bit annoyed with no one stopping him to at least check if he was a son of an employee. He even walked through the cafeteria area where he was completely visible for everyone to see. At one point he even got food from the line and sat down to eat. He did get a lot of looks, but no one asked him who he was or asked about his badge that was nowhere to be seen. Even Hisashi was starting to get a bit annoyed with his employees. It was one thing if they didn't stop Izuku, but it was an entirely different thing to not report a random individual being in the building without a badge. Izuku had gone to several floors where he could have gotten into desks where they were planning new product lines for several different subsidiary businesses. There was a reason that Midoriya Enterprise was the parent company to all of these other businesses. They sent out new ideas and concepts to the subsidiary companies who furthered them along, and the parent company would watch out for issues or fix things when things went wrong. Hisashi had accessed the reports and call log to the security department, and they haven't received anything since Izuku had entered the building, and that was 2 hours ago. If Izuku had been a spy from another company, they could have lost a lot of data. Izuku had even taken things out of desks as well and swiped flash drives from desks which he didn't even know what was in them either. That fact had set Hisashi off the most. His father kept going onto the different floors as well, so people knew he was in the building. Even if he wasn't, they should still be on top of basic protocols if they see a random person in the building. Even the board member children wear badges to enter the building and move around. The only people that don't are Hisashi and the board members themselves, so it's a limited group that doesn't do it, and they are known. This is the first time Izuku has been in the building. Though at the 3rd hour mark an incident had happened. As Izuku walked past one woman who was talking about marrying Hisashi Midoriya, Izuku couldn't keep his mouth shut and had made a comment about the woman wanting to be a homewrecker. They didn't need to know he was recently divorced, and Izuku wasn't going to let just any woman or man, if his father went that way, get into his home. He already had one horrible mother figure, and if his father could go 200 years with only one woman, then he could go anywhere 200 without another one that wasn't actually good. Though this comment from Izuku earned looks from the woman and comments from her. She said Izuku should keep his mouth shut since he didn't understand adult things, and that he would when he was older. Whatever you say. Doubtful he would go for you when you have a rotten personality, Izuku commented and turned to walk away when the woman grabbed him by the collar and pulled him backward. This caught the attention of other workers who had just noticed Izuku being in the office. "Let go of me, you crazy woman." Izuku shouted at her and struggled to get free. This is when things turned as the woman got fed up with Izuku. "It seems your parents didn't teach you manners," she said as she turned around and slapped Izuku across the face, earning gasps from everyone. Several male workers moved in and pulled the woman off Izuku and pulled him away from her. At that point, Izuku was in shock and was having flashbacks to being bullied and neglected. Cue tears and screaming. "Sniffle, sniffle, papa." Izuku cried out and broke down into tears. The woman just screamed for him to shut up since she realized that this wasn't looking good for her, as her coworkers were calling security to deal with the situation, but sadly for her she chose the wrong kid. "Who the hell made my son cry?" Hisashi yelled out, and everyone paled when they heard his voice and saw him running over. When he arrived, Izuku ran to him and grabbed onto his leg, and that is when he saw the handprint on Izuku's face from being slapped. "Who the F dared to harm my child?" Hisashi screamed out, and everyone pointed to the woman that did it. Security arrived, and Hisashi told them to detain the woman and call the police to arrest her for harming a child. The woman paled at that and tried to defend herself and make up lies of Izuku assaulting her. You think I am stupid? There are security cameras I can check, so it's pointless for you to lie to me, Hisashi said as he just pulled the video up showing what happened. Soon the police arrived after about 10 minutes and had arrested the woman. Hisashi had ended up calming Izuku down and he ended up falling asleep at the sound of Hisashi's heartbeat. Hisashi called a company-wide employee meeting in the massive auditorium room where they do company-wide meetings such as these or large product launches to the public where they invite investors and other people to see the reveal of new product lines. Within 30 minutes, all of the employees, for the most part, had all gathered in the auditorium. They all wondered what the meeting was about since there was nothing scheduled today, but the ones on the floor where the incident happened knew why they got called. The board of directors also knew why the meeting was called. They were honestly sad. They were sad about Izuku getting hurt and the fact that so much data could have been stolen by any random person that walked into the building since no one had called security about a random individual without a badge. Good afternoon, or I would say that if I wasn't so sad. Hisashi started out and ever flinched a bit at his tone. So I want to talk about multiple things. But I'm sure you are all wondering about the kid that is sleeping behind me who looks adorable with his sleeping face. Well, hands off since that is my son. The one woman today decided that assaulting my son was an acceptable action. Even if he wasn't my son, I accept none of you to harm a child because if I find out about it you can consider your job here gone. Hisashi stated, and everyone was in shock about hearing that their boss had having a son. They all thought he never had a family, but they just got proven wrong. They were also scared that someone had dared to hurt sad boss's child. They all prayed for that foolish woman's soul to survive Hisashi Midoriya's wrath. So several things with my son. Yes, he will inherit this company, so you should treat Annie, he says, as if it was something from me. I will be teaching him how to operate the business, but he's honestly very smart and had my brains, so it won't be long before he gets fully involved after a few more years of growing up. Don't be surprised if he comes in with white hair and white eyes like me since he changes them via a quirk user we know all the time to match me. Don't ask about the mother, Hisashi said, laying some ground rules for everyone. They all nodded their heads as they listened in. Then it was time for the more serious topic as Hisashi started to plug flash drives into the laptop he had on the stage that was connected to a projector behind him. He had 2 screens so he could make sure he wanted to show anything before he actually showed it. Now, the next topic. If you see someone without a badge and they are not me, the board members, and my son moving forward, then what does the company police state? Anyone? Hisashi asked, and a person yelled out to call security. Hisashi nodded his head. Indeed, to that person that said called security. It's one thing to ask a person where their badge is, but really you should call security for them to deal with it. The problem with that is my son has been in the building for 3 hours and until today none of you knew of him. He did not wear a badge the entire time once he moved pasted the lobby. So, 3 hours worth of people seeing him, and no one called security. Do you know how big of a security risk that is? Hisashi asked and no one answered, but Hisashi could see at a lot of their eyes that they understood. Hisashi started to display documents off the flash drives. My son at my request snagged a lot of sensitive data from desks. He had a decent amount of information here that could cost us about $1 billion in damages if this got into our competing company's hands. That is how big of an issue this is. If you see someone without a badge, then call security at once. Stop what you are doing and call security, or have someone near you do it if you are on a call with someone else already. Hisashi said, and everyone shouted out that they understood. After talking about some other things and how he planned to make some security changes moving forward to better help protect the building, like installing an alarm system that would go off if someone entered past a certain point without a badge on, but that people should still call if they don't see a badge present just to be safe if it isn't a board member, Izumi Midoriya, or himself. Hisashi then dismissed everyone to return to work, and Hisashi picked Izuku up, which made some people smile at seeing their normally cold stone boss being sweet and happy with his son. Third POV, Hisashi had grabbed Izuku and taken him upstairs to his office. The board members all came into his office and their children were with them as well since they were already out of school. The kids asked if Izuku was all right and Hisashi nodded his head and spoke. He will be. getting attacked by an older woman likely caused some memories to resurface of his upbringing. His mother, though never laid a hand on him, did not take care of him. She neglected him and his stepsister physically and verbally bullied him to extreme levels. Hisashi stated, and the kids flinched back a bit and then looked at Izuku with a bit of sympathy. They asked if they could help in any way, and Hisashi said to just be friends with Izuku, which they accepted to do. After about 10 minutes of sleeping, Izuku woke up to see everyone in the room with him. "Well, hello everyone, that I have no idea who you are, but I will assume you are the board members and their children," Izuku stated as he rubbed his eyes a bit and moved to sit next to Hisashi. Everyone chuckled a bit at Izuku's statement since it was right, but it was just funny in how he phrased it. "Hisashi, these are the board members for the parent company. Through them, I do a lot of the work. Though do note that this isn't a publicly traded company and I own 100% of it. I've never taken it private nor intend to ever. I'm not required to have a board of directors, but it's nice to have people that I trust to throw the work to, who I know will ensure it gets done. I can also go to them for their opinions on things or leave them in charge to run the business. For example, when I had that accident at your 𝗵𝗲𝗃𝗃 that forced me out of your life, they took over and ran until I recovered. As such, if you ever need help in the future when you run the company, then just lean on them," Hisashi said, and Izuku nodded his head and greeted them all. Izuku took all of their names in but focused mostly on the two senior members since they knew everything about his father's past and quirk. As such, they would be the ones that he deals with almost all of the time since he knew he could trust them with anything. The first man was called 𝗵𝗃𝗃, and he was of Japanese descent but had an American mother. He did spend years in Japan but moved to America with his mother after the death of his father and hasn't returned since unless it was for business. Izuku also was told by his father that the two senior members both have a minor slow-aging quirk since Hisashi liked to keep trusted allies close at hand for as long as possible. The second senior board member was of American descent and his name was 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃. He also had the anti-aging quirk as well. Both men were in their 60s, but 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 had become a close member of Hisashi's inner circle when he was a bit younger than 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃. As such, 𝗳𝗏𝗃𝗃 looks much younger even though he is roughly the same age as 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃. After talking to them for a bit longer and being introduced to the children of the board members, it was almost time for the day to come to an end. Hisashi had decided to pull Izuku off to the side for a private conversation. "Son, I wanted to talk about your education. As it stands, you currently have an education level of a high school student. As such, I've been debating whether or not to actually send you to school when the new school year starts, since you would be more or less bored. You would also only be going for the social aspect, which we could arrange for you to get via other means. I would like your thoughts on this since you are young but you are mature due to your experiences," Hisashi stated, and Izuku nodded his head and thought it over. In all honesty, Izuku did not want to go to school to learn the things he already knew about. As he thought it over, he decided to ask some questions. "If I didn't go, what would I do instead?" Izuku asked, and Hisashi nodded his head and was glad his son asked the important questions. "You first would need to take a placement exam to qualify to not go after all. Wherever your education level lands, then that is where you will start at. If it lands in the last year of high school, then you will learn the material you need to graduate and take another placement exam to test out of school. Once that happens, I want you to start college-level education early and take online classes," Hisashi said, and then took some water and drank some of it before talking again. "Depending on how all of that goes, we would start far heavier in your quirk and physical training more than we already are, since I know you want to be a hero. Unlike Japan, America allows you to be approved to take their hero exam if you have sponsors that are willing to pay for the cost of the exam outside of the exams that are given to the hero schools. As such, you don't need to attend a hero school to receive your license. There is also a special program that I don't want to talk about right now, but I am sure the commission will want to ask you to join. I would like to delay that until you are 12 at minimum," Hisashi said, and Izuku thought it over. It sounded like a good deal and he wanted to go about that route. "I want to do that. Let's have me take the placement exam and then go from there. I could also start learning more about the things I will need to operate the business, and I can take over some functions from you to help integrate myself in the long term, since we are both not likely going to die for centuries since our quirks and all," I'm going to hold off on taking the anti-aging one until I'm close to 14 so I can obtain a nice young look but still look a bit older than what I am right now," Izuku said as he smiled. Hisashi shook his head. "Dear God, my child is going to be a lady killer," Hisashi thought as he rubbed Izuku's head. Soon they decided to head back to the house and get started on setting up the placement exam. Izuku had said goodbye to the children of the board members and told them he would speak to them another time. Overall, Izuku didn't know how to feel about those kids. They were nice and all, but Izuku knew they were wanting to become friends with Izuku due to his father and their parents. Izuku wanted to befriend people on his own and decided he would see if he could have good luck at doing it with other people out in the city every so often. No one really knew about Izuku being Hisashi's son, so Izuku wouldn't have anyone really trying to befriend him just over that and his newfound wealth via his father. Soon though they arrived home to find the family lawyer Seth King waiting for them. "Why hello Seth. What brings you here since I don't remember us having a meeting scheduled?" Hisashi asked. Seth nodded his head and confirmed that they didn't. "Indeed, I came here about your will and estate documents. How we had your documents set up is that in the somehow astronomical misfortune that you die is that Izuku gets everything via a series of trusts and other methods," Seth stated, and Hisashi nodded his head knowing this but didn't see an issue. "Well, the issue you might be missing is that Inko is named in the documents as well, since we assumed she was a fit parent and everything. She was made the one managing the trust with the board's help. We need to remove any mention of her and just give Izuku full control of everything. Again, I don't see you dying or anything with your quirks, but you pay me for these types of things to make sure there are no bumps in the road that we could have foreseen," Seth stated, and Hisashi now understood why this needed to happen. "Okay, let's go in the house and change everything up. I'm assuming you have everything already made?" Hisashi asked and received a confirmation. "Also, Izuku's citizenship paperwork and everything else has arrived. I grabbed them out of your mailbox and opened them. I've reviewed them and everything is in good order, so there are no issues there," Seth stated, and Hisashi thanked him. Soon they both sat down and Izuku just went to the gym and started to work out a bit. Over the past few weeks, his body has gotten healthier due to the better food and proper diet he has been eating. As such, Izuku could see a massive change in his body form since he went from a skinny stick kid to a leaner and with some excess fat on him since he has been taking in more food than he has burned off, which was good for him to have a healthy body and weight. Now, it was time to start getting a proper workout to increase his strength and speed. After working out for about an hour, he heard his father call for him, so Izuku headed upstairs after wiping down with a towel. "You dead?" Izuku asked, and Hisashi waved him over. "Sign these documents. They are confirming you as my sole heir to everything I own. Though you will never need any of these documents since we will live for centuries, well, unlike All Might finds me somehow and attacks again," Hisashi said with a shrug, but Izuku didn't find that comment funny and had a tear in his eye. All Might won't take you away, right?" Izuku said with a sniffle, and Seth turned to Hisashi with the look on his face that said, "You just done fed up man." Hisashi realized he screwed up as well as he pulled Izuku into a hug and calmed him down. No. He won't, even if he finds me here in America. He can't do SHT to me since I'm not a wanted criminal in America. I also got the government at my back to help me, unlike in Japan," Hisashi stated. Izuku nodded his head, and soon they broke apart and Izuku went to take a shower since he was dirty from working out. Third POV. Izuku was currently running in Central Park as he had taken to running around all of the paths that are made around the park. It's also reasonably safe as well since there is a police precinct made on the park itself due to how high traffic the park is. Also, there are a handful of heroes that have patrol routes through the park. As such, Central Park is a safe place for civilians to roam around at without fear of being attacked. It has also been about half a year since Izuku has been with his father. Many things have changed in Izuku's life. One example of the changes is that Izuku did sit for his placement exam, had passed his high school education and everything below. As such, Izuku was now starting his college-level education and was working on his bachelor's degree in quirk science. Izuku wanted to get a PhD in quirk science, but he knew it would take time, which he honestly had, so Izuku didn't bother rushing his college-level education, but he didn't slack off in it either. Izuku's therapy sessions have also been moved recently from twice a week to twice a month since the therapist deemed him stable enough. Izuku still had anger and resentment towards his previous family, but he was getting better at not holding on to the said anger anymore. Hisashi wasn't worried that Izuku would turn down the same path that he himself had taken 200 years ago. The doctors were also giving Izuku a clean bill of health with his improved diet and body weight. Izuku now was far more lean and compact, but he was starting to grow in height at a fast pace since he was actually having an actual diet that he needed to grow instead of being starved of the resources his body needed like in the past. As Izuku was running through the park, he heard a scream on his return journey towards his home. He followed the sound and had found a group of children surrounding two smaller children on the ground. Izuku decided against calling the police since it might be them just playing rough and it was likely something he could just get involved in and scare them off by threatening to call the police. Izuku listened in and heard the main group of children picking on the two children on the ground. They were talking about how the two needed to stop coming to their territory, which was ironic in Izuku's opinion since the land they were on was owned by Hisashi Midoriya, though it was still open to public use. After listening in a bit more and before one of the bigger kids could throw a punch, Izuku stepped in and got involved. "But what do you think you are doing?" asked what kid. Izuku just rolled his eyes at them, which just annoyed them. They started talking about how Izuku shouldn't interfere in their matters and that it was their space that they didn't want other children coming to. Izuku scoffed. "First, this is open to the public to use but privately owned land that you are standing on currently. So it's not yours at all to decide who can come and go. Second, you are picking on them for what? Just being here. That is pathetic, especially for the fact that you stated you wanted to be heroes and all from what I heard about. So listen well and clean your ears out. You won't try and stop people from coming here in the future, nor will you harm others, or I will call the police on you and report you. It would be quite hard for you if you wanted to become heroes with you assaulting people, no," Izuku said with a smirk on his face, and a lot of the children standing in front of him flinched back at the threat of calling the police, but one main boy scoffed at Izuku and decided to push the issue. "I can do what I wish. My father is a deputy commissioner in the police force. The police won't do anything to me since they won't risk losing their jobs," stated the bully. Izuku asked him what his father's name was and the boy willing gave it. Izuku pulled his phone and looked it up. Izuku nodded his head and confirmed that the name was listed as a deputy commissioner. "What's your name then and all of yours?" Izuku asked the boys and they stupidly gave them. Izuku then called 𝗳𝗵𝗃𝗃 and after a few rings, he answered. "Hello, Seth. Yes, I am doing fine. I have some names for you." "Yes, they are," Izuku stated as he gave the names. Everyone was confused why he was giving someone their names. "Yes. The reason I gave you them is that I want you to file paperwork banning them from the land that we own in Central Park. Also, I want you to look into their families and bring the issue up with the mayor of the city and the police commissioner since the first name I gave you claims to be the son of a deputy commissioner and is using his father's position to threaten people and most likely threaten police officers," Izuku stated, and after being silent for a few minutes he nodded his head. Soon the phone call ended and Izuku ended the call. They were all silent as they looked at him. "So good news or rather bad news for you. Your family will soon receive notices stating that you are banned from entering this section of the park since it's private property. 2. An investigation will be started to look into your threatening of people with your father's position and if he had knowledge of you doing it, which might cost him his job. All of you other boys will also receive notices banning you from this section of the park as well. Any questions?" Izuku stated with a kind smile, which wasn't so kind since he was just bashing them. They were all stunned when the main boy spoke up asking who the hell he was. Izuku just smiled widely at this since his confidence since being with his father has skyrocketed. "I am 𝗬𝗃𝗃 Midoriya and you are on my family's land," Izuku stated with a grin. The boys all ran away after he said that, but Izuku rolled his eyes since that wasn't going to stop anything that was set in motion. Izuku then turned around and looked at the two kids that were being picked on. Izuku though froze when he was about to speak. "Cute," he thought as he laid eyes on the girl in front of him. The girl had crimson red hair with 2 ponytails. Soon he snapped out of his thoughts and started speaking. "Are you both all right?" Izuku asked the girl and her friend who had brown hair but didn't catch Izuku's attention as the crimson-hair girl did. "We're fine. Thank you though for saving us," the red-haired girl said with a smile. The other girl thanked Izuku as well before they all started to talk. Izuku didn't pay much attention to the other girl because his attention was focused on the crimson-haired girl who he learned was named 𝗬𝗲. He asked if they lived in the city and the brown-hair girl said no, while Stella said that her family had just moved to the city since their family business was expanding and she was still figuring everything out. "If you want, I can help you around the city. I've only been here 6 months, but it's better than nothing," Izuku suggested, and the brown-hair girl rolled her eyes at Izuku's attempt to flirt, or what she thought was him flirty. The girl decided to leave since she had only met Stella when they got bullied and said she had to go, which just left the two of them. "Well, I'll accept your offer. Shall we go explore?" she asked, and Izuku nodded his head as they left the area they were in, and Izuku took her to the things around the central park. These things included the small zoo at the park or the art museum. Then they stopped at the playground that was near the small amusement park that was seasonal. This little amusement park is seasonal. It changes with the seasons, so during winter they have ice skating. I didn't do it when I first came to New York since I had things that were far more important to handle, Izuku said as they walked past it and into the playground. Stella thanked Izuku for showing her around the park and asked if he would show her around the city on another day, and Izuku agreed. They even swapped numbers as they sat down in the park. Izuku decided to get to know her a bit more than the general questions that they had talked about while walking. "So you said your family's business had expanded and you just recently moved here. What does your family do and where did you guys expand from?" Izuku asked her as they sat down. She looked at him and shrugged a bit. "I don't involve myself that much into it. I know I will inherit the business in the future, but that won't be until I'm older. Right now my father wants me to enjoy life, and I also plan to be a hero as well. I can tell you that we did expand from France though. The family business centers around many different things and I know only some of them. I do know we do some work in luxury brands that we export out of France. We had recently made a deal with a major company here in New York that is an international company but does most of their business in the United States, but I don't remember the name since I wasn't involved in anything. I just came along for the ride," Stella stated, and Izuku nodded his head. "I wonder if it's with my father's business," Izuku thought. Then he asked her if she missed any of her friends back in France. "Not really. Most of them were my friends due to my parents' businesses. I'm hoping to make friends here in America, which it seems I've made one," she said as she smiled at Izuku. "Demon, that's an arrow to my heart," Izuku thought, and he cursed himself for having a crush on a girl he just met. Soon it was starting to get darker out when Stella's phone ranged. She pulled her phone out and it read, "Father," on it. She answered it and Izuku could hear the other side due to how close they were sitting. "Ah, hello Papa," she stated, and Izuku heard the other side asked where she was since she hasn't come home yet. "I am currently at the playground in the Central Park. I ran into a problem with some bullies, but this boy came and saved me, and he showed me around the park and took me to a lot of the sights in the park," Stella stated, and she kept nodding her head to her father's statements. "Okay, I'll be waiting," Stella said and ended the call. She then turned to Izuku and asked if he would mind waiting until her father came and picked her up. Izuku nodded her head and agreed to wait. After about 10 minutes, a male's voice was heard from behind them as they were playing on the swings. Izuku and Stella turned around and saw what Izuku assumed was her father due to the red crimson hair that they both shared. Overall, the male was quite bulky, not all might bulky but definitely extremely fit. "There you are, sweetie," the man said as he hugged his daughter. He then saw Izuku, who was standing up now. The man introduced himself to Izuku. "Hello, young man. I am 𝗵𝗃. I want to thank you for helping my daughter earlier today with the bullies. What is your name, by the way?" Francis asked Izuku. "It's Izuku, sir," Izuku said, not saying his last name, and the man noticed but didn't say anything about it. "Well, young man, I and my daughter need to go for today," he said, and Stella came over before they left. "Icky, I'll text you later since we traded numbers. Remember, you promised to show me to other places in the city, so you better keep the promise," Stella said, and Izuku raised an eyebrow. "Icky?" he asked, and she nodded her head. "Yup, you're Icky from now on." she said as she turned around and pulled her father away. Izuku just shook his head at her antics and the new name. Ironically, they would see each other sooner than they thought. Third POV. Izuku and Stella talked over text messages a lot for the next month and a half. They couldn't meet up in person since both of them had gotten busy with their parents. Stella's family was finishing everything they needed to finalize their move to America and were finishing opening their American headquarters, while Izuku and Hisashi had been training non-stop and adapting Izuku into the business environment. Hisashi wanted Izuku to get his feet wet with learning the reports and everything, so Izuku would be given a stack of documents to read and Hisashi would question him on different things that he should have noticed in the documents. Izuku was also getting much better in his training as well and had taken a few more quirks to add into his stockpile. Quirk list. Advanced all for 𝗵𝗃 quirk. This allows the user to copy, take, give, and combine quirks. Currently, there is no limit to the number of quirks that the user can hold. It takes about 1 minute to copy a quirk with physical contact. Other actions can be done within seconds. Hyper regeneration. This allows the user to use stamina to regeneration their body and wounds. Stamina booster. The user's stamina is recuperated at x2 their natural body rate. Familia telepath. This allows the user to send messages to people that he considers close to or who he considers family. Geolocation. This allows the user to acquire the general location within 100 feet of a person that they are thinking of. Crow. This allows the user to communicate and order crows to do his bidding. Izuku could also connect his mind to the crows and see through their eyes. Though if the crows don't like him, then they can break free of his control through sheer willpower, though it's unlikely of it working. Knowledge. The user absorbs the knowledge of things once they come in contact with it. If they touch an apple, they know where it was grown from and what type of apple it is. 𝗬𝗵𝗃𝗧 combined quirk, pitch black and shadow minion. This allows the user to materialize any shadows with varying strength and form it to meet their needs. The user could make items like WHPS or weapons, clones made of shadows, wings out of shadows, or anything else that their mind can imagine. The user can even travel via the shadows since he is one with the shadows. Pitch black. This allows the user to control shadows, and the darker the shadows under control, the stronger they are. Shadow minion. The user is able to control their personal shadow and make it materialize as a physical form. Shock absorption. This allows the user to take kinetic energy and absorb it into his body and use it to boost their own strength. Velocity. The user can steal the kinetic energy from people and objects in motion to gain more speed while slowing the person or object down due to the stolen energy. Double strength booster. Grants the user of the quirk a doubling effect of their natural strength. The stronger the individual's body is, the stronger the doubling effect is of their strength. Color changer. This quirk allows the user to change the color of any hair on his body and allows him to change the color of his eyes as well. New quirks that Izuku added to his stockpile. Warrior replication. This allows the user to learn the fighting styles of others at a faster pace and adapt the fighting styles into one overall compact and efficient fighting style. This provides an overall edge in battle if the user engages in close quarters combat. Null. This allows the user to negate the effects of other quirks upon himself if he decides to have it active. A lie detector quirk wouldn't work on him, and ring is true if he had it active. Pain negation. This allows the user to lower the amount of pain they feel from injuries and allows them to push through during a battle. It can be turned on and off at the will of the user, so they can make sure they aren't missing a wound that needs to be taken care of. Though the hyper regeneration takes care of Izuku's wounds. Now, outside of the training and everything else that has been going on, Izuku had learned that his father had requested him to come to a meeting with him. The meeting was with a newer business partner, but they were still a well-established company that was from France. This company has expanded into the American market, and Midoriya Enterprise was helping the company out since it would give them access to a new business segment that they haven't done much in. The France company was mainly focused on more luxurious brands such as clothing, perfumes, high-end food establishments, and some other things that Midoriya Enterprises didn't get involved much in as it currently stood. Hisashi however wanted to invest more into these segments since Midoriya Enterprise had their hands in almost anything and everything, and this would present another chance at expanding their limited influence in those segments to be more influential, since they would have some ownership in the American segments that the French company would open. It would also open the door into the other company's businesses if Hisashi played his cards right. Izuku got dressed in his more business attire outfit and waited for his father in the living room of their home. Today he decided to sport his white hair and white eyes to match his father. In this state, he looked more or less like a miniature version of his father, and Izuku always enjoyed that fact. Hisashi accepted it for several reasons. 1. Hisashi wanted Izuku to feel comfortable with his own looks. 2. Based on the words of the therapist, is that Izuku suffers from some self-hatred when he sees his green hair and green eyes, since it reminds him of Inko Yagi. As such, the therapist told Hisashi to always accept what Izuku might change his hair and eye color to on the fly, since it shows that Izuku is having a day down in regards to his mental health. Though Hisashi was told that Izuku would likely mellow out onto a permanent hair color moving forward in the future once he lets go of his anger fully for the most part, the therapist believes that Izuku will likely settle on white hair and white eyes due to its connection to Inko. Hisashi and Izuku soon made it to the office and went to Hisashi's office. The meeting would be in the next hour or so. So, I've given you most of the information regards to the meeting. The main reason I needed you was because the owners of the business have a daughter that will lead the business in the future but isn't really involved at the moment until she's older. I just need you to entertain her for an hour or two since she is the same age as you. Hisashi asked. Izuku nodded his head and was willing to help. Soon, his phone vibrated and he saw it was from Stella. She had told him that her parents had dragged her to a meeting for the business since they wanted her to meet the other side and start getting used to doing things like that. Izuku wished her luck and she just sent a smiley face back. Hisashi saw the texting and made a joke about Izuku having a crush, which caused Izuku to almost drop his phone and then glare up at his father. Stop being an embarrassing dad. Izuku pouted at his father, who just kept teasing him. Soon it was time for the meeting, and Izuku followed his father into the meeting room to find one Francis Vermillion and a woman who looked like an older version of Stella. Izuku looked around the room and found the person he hoped to be in the room when he saw Francis. Indeed, just sitting in a chair behind the adults was one Stella Vermillion. Izuku wanted to dart over but knew it would be rude since they were in a business setting. Though Hisashi recognized the girl based on Izuku's description and look at his son, who was visibly brighter and having a hard time staying still. Hisashi smiled a bit and then spoke to the other party in the room. Hello, Francis. It's good to see you again since the last time. I'm assuming this is your wife you told me about. Hisashi asked as he shook hands with Francis. Indeed, this is my wife Astrea Vermillion, and behind us is our daughter Stella Vermillion, Francis stated as he introduced his wife and daughter. Hisashi introduced himself and then waved his son over. Izuku then walked up and waved at Stella, who looked confused. You forgot about me, Izuku said with a small sad smile. Hisashi rolled his eyes since his son forgot that he changed his hair and eye color. Even though you look similar, you still have a large difference between the two since it creates two different feelings from you, Hisashi said. Son, you forgot you changed your hair and eye color, Hisashi said, and Izuku rubbed the back of his head. Sorry. Hello everyone, I'm Izuku Midoriya. Stella imagines me with green hair and green eyes, Izuku said, and Stella's eyes widened and then she hugged Izuku, who started to stutter. Hisashi just chuckled a bit with the other parents. Why did you change your hair and eye color? I kind of liked how you looked before, she said, and Izuku snapped back to the color green without even really thinking about it, which shocked the Vermillions. That's cool. Is that your quirk? She asked, and Izuku rubbed his head and shook his head. Think of my quirk on the lines of a copy quirk. It's more than that, but it's easier to explain like that in concept, Izuku said, covering his entire quirk with a half-truth. Stella nodded her head and then they heard a small cough and they turned around to find Astrea looking at the two of them. Stella, is this the boy that saved you from the bullies? She asked, and Stella nodded her head. Astrea thanked Izuku, who said it wasn't a problem. Izuku, would you take Stella around the place and entrain her for an hour or so until we are finished? Hisashi said, and Izuku agreed and took her hand and lead her away. Though boy children could hear the parents make jokes about them which caused them to blush. Izuku took Stella to one of his favorite rooms in the building, which was the office game room. I like coming into this room since there are ways to entrain myself when I hit my limit with doing the business work, Izuku said to Stella. She nodded her head and asked if he was involved heavily in the business. I'm getting more and more involved in it. I don't go to school since I graduated high school already and working on my college degrees. I'm also privately training with Dad to be a hero in the future, but that will take years. He thinks he will pay for the exam outside of the hero schools when I hit 12 since he plans to train me to learn everything I need. Izuku said, and Stella nodded her head. I don't know where I want to go to hero school at. I'm recently tested out of my middle school classes and started working on high school knowledge, but I think my dad will still have me attend a hero school since they don't have the experience to train me in that regard. She stated, and Izuku nodded his head. He did tell her if she ever wanted to train then they could try to find some time. She thanked him for the offer and told him her quirk. Izuku was interested in the quirk. It was more or less a fire aspect quirk. It was called Phoenix Queen and allowed Stella to control all fire and even heal herself with it. It also allowed her to summon and materialize an actual sword as well. That was an interesting quirk in Izuku's viewpoint as it had several different aspects. Stella told Izuku that her family had a line of heroes in their family except for her parents who didn't feel as if that was their calling and had decided to go into business instead. Izuku had heard several of the family hero names since he was a hero nerd in the past, and some of her family lines were quite famous heroes in France. Soon the time passed and the meeting between the families came to an end. Stella hugged Izuku goodbye and said she will text him later. Izuku waved back and said goodbye as well. He never realized that he never changed his hair color back either, nor felt his anger that he had towards his past family since early morning since he was too focused on Stella the entire time. Hisashi had noticed it though and made a note to inform the therapist of it. Third POV. 3 years have now passed since Izumi Yagi had gone missing from his home one Friday night. Izuku would now be 12 years old since it was his birthday. The Yagis still haven't given up hope of finding Izuku, but for the most part, everyone else that wasn't directly connected to him in some way had given up hope. Endeavor, Nizu, Sir Night Eye, the detective, Recovery Girl, and Aizawa haven't given hope either and have kept their ears and eyes open for any new information but haven't heard of anything about him. The Bakugos and Todorokis haven't given hope up either, but they didn't do anything to help in the case due to not being heroes, so they had to leave it to everyone else, which saddened them. What saddened Izumi though the most was that the public had discovered somehow that she was the daughter of All Might and Green Tornado due to a reporter getting a picture of the three of them one day. The reason this saddened Izumi was that people learned of Izuku's disappearance and only cared more about him being gone due to him being related to All Might and Green Tornado. However, up to that point, no one cared much about him, which showed Izumi more of how wrong she was to treat her brother like she did. Izumi, Shoto, and Katsuki have all attended therapy and have gotten better with time. The school was closed down and students sent to new schools due to what the school did. It was decided that the school would be destroyed since no teacher wanted to be hired at the school since it was that bad and they feared its name on their resume would hurt them. The public though did not learn of the reason why Izuku had disappeared since some officials in the government decided to cover up All Might's and Green Tornado's child neglect since it was deemed that it would be troublesome if criminals were inspired due to their actions. As such, Izuku's runaway due to neglect and physical harm was kept as simply him disappearing for unknown reasons publicly, with only those involved initially in the case knowing the full truth since the case regarding the school was sealed by the said government officials, which sealed any evidence of the harm Izuku came under at the school. Though the Yagi family never learned who ordered it, Nizu had suspicions that it was the Hero Commission that had gotten involved to protect the #1 hero reputation since they feared it would inspire villains, and Izuku was only quirkless in their eyes, so they didn't care about him. Izumi had also started her training to start adapting to hold one for all. All Might decided that he couldn't wait forever to give the quirk up, but Izumi made him a deal. He would hold on to the quirk until a year or so before UA would start. This way Izumi could slowly train her body up to be more prepared to take the quirk on, and it would also leave more time for them to find Izuku before transferring it to her. If they found him before UA started, then the quirk would be offered to Izuku instead of Izumi, since she wanted him to have the chance to become a hero like he always dreamed of. Though, unknown to the Yagis, Izuku was already training to be a hero and was far ahead of her in multiple categories. Anyway, outside of starting her physical training for becoming the 9th user of One for All, Izumi has also started training with Bakugo and Todoroki, who both have leveled out with their egos and attitudes over the years due to the therapy and anger management. Izumi and the 2 others have even taken to doing a lot of community service outside of their daily routines because they found enjoyment in doing it, and some of the community services helped with physical training. For example, they had located a beach called 𝗳𝗵𝗃 Municipal Beach Park, which was turned into a junkyard due to trash washing up on the beach and illegal dumping by other people. The city had fallen behind and the beach was abandoned since no one wanted to put the work into cleaning it. That is how one day Izumi found herself sitting on a half-cleaned beach with Bakugo and Todoroki about 6 months after Izuku's 12th birthday and the marking of him being gone for 3 years. Do you think he will ever forgive us if we do find him? Bakugo thought out loud. Both of the other 2 didn't have an answer really. We can only hope that he will forgive us, but we also need to consider the fact that he will hold resentment towards us and not want anything to do with us. If he is like that, we will have to take it slowly and work his walls down slowly over time, which could take us years, but I refuse to give up," Izumi said with a determined tone, and the 2 boys nodded their heads and agreed to not give up either. Soon, they got back to work on cleaning the beach. While they were doing that, though, there were dark forces moving in the world, preparing for a chaotic future that none of them realized about, but it would also make the past come crashing into the future far quicker than anyone would realize. "In a lab, Doctor, we've secured the resources that you requested," stated a man who looked like he was made of mist. The doctor nodded his head and thanked the man. "Good job. Now, it's time we start pushing our plans forward, but I think it will be good to do a test run of our first variation of my project," stated the doctor who was sitting at a computer. The mist man seemed confused on the test run. "Sir, wouldn't that alert the heroes of our presence and bring the attention to our group and start making them seeking us out and try to find us?" asked the man, and the doctor nodded his head. "Indeed, that is why we will release the creature in America, so it can't be tied back to us here in Japan. By the time they did make a connection, it would likely be a few years, which by then our projects and goals will be in full swing, and at that point, it won't matter since we will have the entire country of Japan government after us. Since we do plan to kill the symbol of peace and whoever the 9th user is after all," stated the doctor, who laughed. The mist man nodded his head before leaving the room to take care of his ward that the doctor had found years ago. The mist man never knew why the doctor had picked this child up, but didn't care since he was required to obey orders from the doctors, since he was programmed to listen to the doctor or the 𝗵𝘃𝗃, or since he was BLD bound to them by All for One when he was created as one of the first successful high-end nomos after all. After the mist man left the room, the doctor turned to look at the tubes that were all against the walls. Soon I will finish what All for One started all those years ago. Though, I could never understand why he decided to disappearance over a decade ago. There is no way that the yellow muscle head had actually killed 𝗵𝘃𝗃 in that fight 12 years ago. I refuse to believe it. Though the doctor started working again on his project that he started after the disappearance of his 𝗵𝘃𝗃 All for One. The doctor had discovered the way to combine multiple quirks into a human body by taking quirks from other people and forcing them into another person. As such, these creatures were born. Though my project is doing good, it's still a far shot from 𝗵𝘃𝗃's creations like 𝗵𝗃𝗃 and 𝗳𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃, who were created via his actual quirk. I am just glad that 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 can't disobey me, since 𝗵𝘃𝗃 had bound him to both of us via BLD, so only 𝗵𝘃𝗃's BLD can override my command since his BLD was put on a higher priority list. Though the doctor, as he kept working Yagi home now while dark forces were gathering and plotting, Inko Yagi was sitting in her son's room where it's been unchanged for years. She could never bring herself to change the room, nor could All Might. All Might had always lived with so much regret when he realized what he had done to Izuku. He had promised himself that he would never treat a quirkless child like how his father treated him, and he ended up doing it. He ended up just like the man that he was always disgusted with during the past. However, he could only promise himself now to improve and hope that he could earn forgiveness from Izuku once they found him, even though he didn't feel like he deserved forgiveness. Inko had pulled back from the public eye a lot more and spent a lot of her time on rescue missions more than anything else in hopes of somehow finding Izuku on a mission. She also started doing charity work for quirkless children, which people understood due to her having had a quirkless child. Inko though did it out of redemption since she knew these children most likely went through something similar to her son, so she wanted to help them as much as she could so they had a better life than they would have had previously. Though unknown to the Yagis, time was only counting down until the day that the past met the present, since Sir Night-Eye and the others involved in the case knew that Izumi Midoriya was going to be found most likely in the first year of Izumi's time at Yu due to his vision, but they didn't know if he was going to be found dead or alive due to the tone of the vision, so they could only prepare for it and prepare for any fallout and hope the worst outcome hadn't happened. And in Izu's view, the worst outcome was Izuku becoming a villain who came back to seek revenge, since it would destabilize Japan's hero system to learn that All Might's son became a villain due to the family's actions had gotten covered up, which only made it worse in Nizu's viewpoint. Nizu believed the issues should have been revealed to the public years ago, since it would have allowed the public to recover from them with time while All Might redeems himself in their eyes. But if Izuku comes back with vengeance, then it's most likely over for the hero system. Third POV. Years have passed and Izumi Midoriya was now slightly over 12 years old. Izuku has also started to figure out his feels for Stella and had approached his father about the so-called issue. That is how Izuku found himself in his father's office back at the house. Izuku hardly came into the room since it was his father's office, and there wasn't much of a need to enter the room since he had his own private office if he ever did any business work at the home as well, since he has gotten more heavily involved in the business as the years passed. Izuku has grown up quite well and has also recently obtained his first PhD in quirk science from Columbia University, which was 10th ranked university in the world and 3rd ranked in the United States. Izuku had started work on another PhD, but wasn't putting as a heavy focus on it as he did the first one. He was getting a PhD in business management since Izuku was going to run the entire business one day. He decided he should just get the degree now instead of later on. However, back to the reason why Izuku was sitting in his father's office and was a nervous mess. Hisashi felt like he had an idea of why his son was a nervous mess and was in his office, but he decided to let his son confirm his thoughts first before speaking of it to avoid a potential unneeded mess if he was wrong. So, son, you said you had something you wanted to talk about and that you needed advice on. Hisashi asked as he moved them both to chairs near a window for a more comfortable setting instead of it being more formal of sitting across the desk from each other. Izuku nodded his head and took his time to speak. Hisashi looked over his son and just let him take his time. He's more or less calmed down on the constant changing of the hair color due to Stella. Since she liked looking at him with green hair and eyes so much, he would always keep it green and had added streaks of white into his hair, which Stella honestly found cute in her opinion, which would always make Izuku a blushing mess. Though, Izuku did leave the eye colors alone since it was hard to make them two colors in the same eye, and he found it weird to have one color for each eye. Hisashi thought as he looked his son over, waiting for him to speak his thoughts. Soon though his wait was over as Izuku finally spoke up. How do I deal with confessing my feelings to a girl? Izuku asked, and Hisashi smiled since he was right on the money of what the issue was. I had a feeling it was going to be this topic. First, we will need to also have a conversation about the birds and bees. I know you likely already know, but I need to cover my bases. Second, indeed, how to confess your feelings. Hisashi said as he nodded his head and thought it over. For me, I just outright said it to your mother, even though she turned to be a beach later on. But moving on to Stella. Hisashi said, and Izuku waved his hands and tried to deny it was Stella, but Hisashi shook his head. Please. Izuku, neither myself nor the Vermilions are blind to you and Stella's little tango around each other over these years. We're surprised it lasted this long, in all honesty. Now you can just outright confess or try to be a bit romantic about it. I suggest making a gift or something to make it romantic. Maybe even taking her back to the place you both met and then confessing there could be an idea. Hisashi said, and Izuku nodded his head. Soon they kept talking for about half an hour of ideas and how Izuku could go about it. We need to talk about the birds and the bees. I know you don't want to do it, but I got some warnings to give about some things. First, if you are going to have SXL relations at any point, then be safe about it. I would rather not have a grandchild with you still being only 12 years old, so wait until you're like 15 or something. Hisashi said, and Izuku gave him a questioning look. Hisashi shrugged and spoke. Remember, time and age are more or less a novel concept. I am over 200 years old, remember. You also have taken the anti-aging quirk already but have it deactivated right now, so you don't really have to worry about age either in the future. I just don't want you making a kid yourself until you're a bit older, and 𝗧𝗏 also needs to grow up. On the topic of your anti-aging and 𝗧𝗏, Hisashi said, and Izuku's eyes widened in the realization. He's never thought about it until that moment, but he realized 𝗧𝗏 would die and he would outlive her by centuries. That thought made him so sad and heartbroken. I can see where your thoughts are going, and they are a real concern, but remember what your quirk is. You can copy quirks, give them, combine them, and take them. Make a copy of the anti-aging and give her one in a few years at an age that she will like, since she won't be able to turn it off like you, or I could use our main quirk. I've shown you how to go about inserting a second quirk in a person since we did it for a recent member of the board that has become a senior member. If you rush the process, it could hurt their brains and bodies, causing brain damage. As such, you need peace and quiet, and to take as long as the process requires for their bodies to accept it. I've done it multiple times with the senior members and others close to me. I've even done it once before in the past long ago on another man that had died, but one of my unique quirks allowed him to live again since I made him into a new entity which I called 𝗬𝗏𝗁𝗲. I did this by reviving him in a sense and adding a new quirk into his body that healed him but also granted him a warping ability. He never did regain his memories though, which I had hoped for since he died protecting children. It had happened right after you were born as well, and that's why I did what I did, since I felt the question of what if they were you. Though, I don't know what happened to him since I had encountered All Might soon after that, so I lost him, and even geolocation can't find him due to his quirk and the fact that he's really two people in one due to his appearances. I did find a quirk that could grant his memories back, but I've never found him. Hisashi stated as he explained how the process worked more carefully, since Izuku could give 𝗧𝗏 a quirk to make her age really slowly so they could enjoy the centuries together in the future, since Hisashi believed the two of them were made for each other, since 𝗧𝗏 would always ground Izuku whenever he was troubled, and Izuku would always care for Izuku for anything she needed even if she didn't ask for something. Izuku nodded his head and took a copy of the memory quirk, so if he ever ran into the so-called 𝗬𝗏𝗁𝗲, then Izuku could give the man his memories back, so if he ever wanted to go back to the old life, he could, since Hisashi said he was an intelligence entity but lacked purpose, so he wasn't sure what he was doing nowadays, since he should have free will unless something happened that he didn't think of. Then they were back on the topic of him and 𝗧𝗏. Izuku was once again being embraced by his father due to the topics they were talking about, but soon it came to an end and Izuku had a good idea of what he wanted to do. A few weeks passed and Hisashi and Izuku were doing their normal training. Izuku had been taught almost everything he would need to know to be a hero, from laws, how to treat injuries, how to calm people down, and so forth. Hisashi decided it was time for Izuku to try out for the hero exam, but that also meant that the Hero Commission would request Izuku to enter their special agent program, which Hisashi was unsure of if Izuku would accept, since it would increase his likelihood of him killing someone. Hisashi decided to sit Izuku down after the training and explain the entire program and what would likely happen if he got his license early. So, from what you told me is that the hero system is more complex than most believe it to be. That the world has a hero system that operates outside of most countries' jurisdictions, since the United Nations operates the so-called special agent heroes. Izuku asked, and Hisashi nodded his head. That is a lot of power in the United Nations' hands, isn't it? Izuku said, and Hisashi shrugged. Not really, since there are a limited number of special ranked heroes that are around, since the government knows it gives these heroes and the UN more power. The special agents still need to report to their own country a lot of the time, but the UN can request them for missions. The special agents also need to be very powerful as well, which limits the number of them, since the countries don't want to look like fools if their agents die on the first mission, since they weren't really up to standard. As such, there are only around 100 or so special agents in the entire world, which is very limited, But again they are extremely powerful people that would give All Might a hard time. Hisashi said, and Izuku asked if they would give him a hard time as well. Hisashi shook his head. In an actual fight then not really. All Might caught me off guard that day since I was on my way home. I've also gained a lot more quirks since then and wouldn't underestimate him as I did. There's a reason all 7 before he died, which sadly does include your grandmother Nana Shimura. Sorry. Hisashi said, and Izuku shrugged. He never met her, so he wasn't attached, and if she were anything like Inko then, well, Izuku wouldn't complain about her being dead. Izuku did mention that it was weird of his father to marry the daughter of a person he killed. I didn't know. She went by Aizawa at the time since she was adopted. Nana Shimura gave her away with her son since she didn't want me touching them. I got to admit, I might have back then with the mental state I had. Hisashi said, and Izuku rolled his eyes. So, that actually brings up a question. Did she ever find out, because that would explain why they neglected me and allowed Izumi to act the way she did towards me? Izuku asked, and Hisashi froze. He thought it over but shook his head. No, unlikely that she knows, Hisashi said, and he was confident that Inko never found out. Oh, that's worst. It would be one thing if she did it with that in mind. But it's worse that she didn't know and still did what she did. Izuku said with a frown. They realized they got off topic a lot and moved back onto the topic of the special agent program. Anyway, with your quirk which grants you the path of always growing stronger, I'm 100% sure that the president of the commission will request you to join the program since he knows about our quirks and your longing to be a hero. Especially one that avoids the public spotlight most of the time, since special agents tend to operate in the shadows most of the time. This means you have a higher chance of killing people as required by the mission, since a villain might be deemed too big of a threat to keep alive, since they would just cause death and destruction if they ever escaped again or are presented the chance. These tend to be the type of villains that special agents deal with most when requested by the UN. So, I need to warn you about it, and you need to decide if you will accept their request or not. Hisashi said, and Izuku sat there thinking it over. He knew that he would likely have to kill as a hero, since hell, even All Might tried to kill his father, so if the so-called symbol of peace has done it, then many other heroes have done it as well. I think I might accept since it will help keep me in the dark more. It will also present chances at getting far more powerful quirks to stockpile as well, since I can be a deterring force against powerful villains from returning if they lack a quirk to do their major crimes with. Izuku said, and Hisashi nodded his head, knowing this was likely the case. Hisashi then told Izuku that he would request the hero exam to be set up in the next few months, so they should prepare for it. Izuku also had to confess to Stella as well. Third POV. About a month after the talk with his father, Izuku was waiting for Stella to show up at the park. He decided that he wanted to take her to the ice skating ring first, since it was in session now, since it was starting to get colder out. After waiting for a bit longer, Stella showed up, and Izuku was having trouble controlling himself from blushing really hard as she walked up to him with a bounce in her step. Dear God, get control of yourself, man. You are a walking arsenal of quirks, and you can't control yourself around the girl you love, Izuku thought in his mind, but realized he had thought of the words love instead of like, and realized how bad he had fallen for Stella. Dear God. I hope she doesn't reject it. Izuku thought, and Stella asked him what would she reject, and he felt like he jumped out of his skin since he muttered it out loud. You will find out later. First, I wanted to take you to the ice skating ring. Izuku said, and she nodded her head. Soon they spent about 2 hours skating before Izuku had decided to take her back to where they first met. There was a bit of light snow on the ground, but Izuku didn't care. Stella had asked him why they were back here where they met, and Izuku nodded his head to himself, and she looked at him worried that he was going insane. Stella, I wanted to bring you here to ask you something. Will you become my girlfriend? Izuku asked as he presented a rose to her. Stella's eyes widened as she saw Izuku with the rose and the look in his eyes. She was frozen for a bit, which made his confidence drop and start thinking that he had just destroyed their friendship because of one-sided love. I'm sorry. I had hoped you had some feels for me. Guess I was wrong. Is there any way he was saying as she leaned in and kissed him on the lips. Yes, you idiot, I will be your girlfriend. Sorry it took me so long. I was shocked that you finally asked, since I've been hoping you would ask for the past year now, you big idiot. Stella said as she smacked the back of his head lightly. It was Izuku's turn to widen his eyes. So that's what Dad meant when he said our parents were waiting for us to get together after our tango around each other. I see. Izuku stated, and that just caused her to blush even more. They both broke out into laughter at the situation and how their parents had been watching them for the past year or so dancing around each other on the issue. Izuku decided to take Stella to a restaurant that was near the park since it was just slightly after lunchtime. They spent the day with each other, and Izuku texted their parents in a group chat that Stella accepted his confession and that they were dating now. The parents all sent back congratulations while Stella's father sent threats that Izuku better treat her right or he was going to hunt him down. Through Stella's mother seemed to have taken his phone away from him and apologized for her idiot husband, and Izuku said it was fine and that he expected the threats. Hisashi had invited the 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗃 over for dinner and had planned to tell the entire family the family secret since Stella deserved to know if she was going to be involved with them on the family level. Izuku was nervous about it, but Hisashi said it was fine and was doubtful that they would shun them. As such, that is how they all found themselves at the Midoriya's home eating dinner that Hisashi had made. So, 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗃, we have a confession to make about our family that you need to know if Stella and you two plan to be connected in death with us, Hisashi said as he set his silverware down and stopped eating. The 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗃s looked at Hisashi while Stella looked at Izuku, who was nervous. She put her hand on Izuku's hand to help him calm down, which did help a bit. The parents asked what he meant. Do you remember when we told you Izuku's quirk was a copy quirk? He stated, and they nodded their heads. Well, that isn't exactly accurate. It has that function, but it's an advanced feature of what Izuku's and my quirk does. Our quirks are called all for one. Ever hear anything about that name? Hisashi asked, and Francis's eyes widened, which meant he did. It's a story passed by my side of the family since we had a family member that was in Japan during the dawn of quirks. Are you telling me you are connected to that man? Francis asked, and Hisashi shook his head. I am that man, Hisashi said, and Francis's eyes widened and Hisashi could see the fear in it while the woman was just confused. Don't worry, Francis. I'm not threatening you or your family. I gave up that life about 12 years ago when Izuku was born. Though I had an accident that forced me out of his life, and I only reunited with my son when he was 9 when I took him away from his disgusting mother, Hisashi stated, and Francis calmed down a bit but was still tense. Stella, noticing the tension, asked Izuku to explain. Stella, my dad was what you would consider the world's first supervillain starting at the dawn of quirks 200 years or so ago. When he met my mother, who I hate, they had me, but Dad got attacked by a well-known hero of Japan when he was coming home one day. This led him to be injured and forced him out of my life, since that same hero ended up meeting my mother and marrying her. They had another kid and never knew I was the son of their enemy. Ironically, the hero was All Might, the symbol of peace, who became my stepfather. He and my mother neglected me for being quirkless since Dad took my quirk at 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗃, since it could have killed me since it manifested then. Their child also physically and verbally assaulted me for years after the age of 4, since quirkless people are treated like they are worse than trash in Japan. I ran away, and Dad, who looks from afar every year at my birthday, found me since I ran away the day before I turned. That's how I came to America, and soon you and I met after a while. Izuku stated. Stella was shocked at learning everything, but she has questions. So you take quirks from random people to make your stockpile of quirks? She asked, and Izuku said no. Dad used to during his whole villain phase, but my quirk allows me to copy people's quirks if I am in contact with them longer than a minute. I can copy, take, give, and combine quirks while Dad can do everything but the first part. Some high up in the government knows of Dad and me here in America. They have even given him a special license to use his quirk. He's not allowed to take quirks away from civilians, but criminals he can, but just has to report it to the government so they know. I've gotten all of my quirks so far from Dad since I just copied out of his 200-year stockpile of quirks. Izuku stated, and Stella nodded her head and asked if he's copied hers yet, and he said no. Doesn't fit the set I'm working on. I don't plan to be a daylight hero currently. I might whenever you become a hero so I can be around you all the time, but right now I plan to work in the shadows, so I've built my quirk set around nighttime with some others mixed in. Izuku said as he showed off a few quirks that he had. Stella thought it was cool and liked the quirks he showed off. She asked what all quirks he had and he told her them all without holding back. Then Stella's mother asked about Izuku not growing old like Hisashi and how that would impact their relationship. Not really any impact. Whenever Stella wants to stop her aging, Izuku will force a second quirk into her. It's possible to do it via me and him without causing damage, but it takes a while. I've done it to a lot of my close associates that know the truth about us. So whenever she wants to lock in her age, she just needs to ask, so I suggest when she's in her late teens since you women like your youth. Izuku can turn the quirk on and off anytime he wishes due to our base quirk, but Stella won't be able to, so she needs to wait to receive it whenever she wants to lock it in. Hisashi stated, and they nodded their heads, and Stella was daydreaming of being young forever, which Izuku shook his head at. They talked about more things about Hisashi's past and found out that there was another quirk called One for All meant to stop the All for One quirk, and that it had been created by Hisashi on accident and that All Might has it right now. Your family history is complex. The 1st, 7th, and 8th users are all related to you in a way, Stella stated as she was rubbing her head a bit from all the information of 200 years being laid on her. Izuku just chuckled. Yeah, but number 8 is an unfit parent, so I don't care about him. Would have loved to meet my uncle or grandmother, oh well. Izuku stated, and she nodded her head. Stella then asked when Izuku was planning to take his hero exam since they had talked about that before. Izuku looked at his father, who spoke up. It's scheduled for next month. Then we will likely receive an invite for him to join the special agent program. Hisashi said and then explained the program. Stella didn't like that he was going to join it but accepted since she knew he was capable of handling himself, especially with the actual quirk of his that gave him a huge advantage in battles. Izuku soon asked Stella if she wanted to go to his room to play on his consoles, and she agreed. As they were leaving, Hisashi shouted out to keep the door open, which made them blush hard. Shut up, old man, or I will make you celibate for the next 200 years. Izuku shouted back and Hisashi broke out in laughter. Joke's on you, son. I didn't have plans to get with anyone anyway. I think one idiotic woman was enough for my old butt. Hisashi yelled back, and you could hear Izuku fall on the stairs because Stella broke out in laughter while trying to ask if he was okay. Soon the next month passed and Izuku was with his father and the Vermilions sitting outside of a building where Izuku would be taking his exam. The exam was set on an off day so Stella could come and support Izuku since she still attended some form of education since her parents wanted her to be social. After waiting about 30 minutes, Izuku was called to follow a man to take him to a changing room to get into his outfit that Hisashi had made. Overall, the outfit took a dark color scheme with more of an Asian theme in it with how the outfit was made. The mask was also a black and blue fox mask that matched the outfit's color scheme and had a black fabric covering all of his hair in the back. Overall, the outfit allowed Izuku to blend into the night, and even during the daytime it would be an amazing outfit if Izuku ever decided to go as a daylight hero instead of an underground hero like he will start out as. The fabric was made to self-repair if it was damaged, and there was enough material to do so since it was a stretching material. It was made to fit around most of Izuku's current quirk set and the likelihood of any future quirks except major ones that changed his body. Izuku had entered a new room after changing and was given a written test that tested him on the main laws that he needed to know and some situations that he needed to apply what he knew to them. This portion of the test was set to take 50 minutes, but Izuku finished it in 20 minutes, which surprised the judges. They thought he was going to fail but were in for a shock when the test showed he had a 100% score on the test. The exam watchers saw no signs of him cheating, and the president of the commission had even had Izuku set up to a machine to monitor quirk usage, and they saw no sign of spike indicating a quirk being activity used outside of the normal activity. As such, he was cleared to move to the next stage. The next stage was a combat section where Izuku had to defeat a range of different opponents. The thing about the separate request exam was that unlike the hero school big exams where they rescue people and then fight in large groups, the separate exam takers fight alone, and then they can choose as many opponents as they want to fight. They then will be judged on how well they do and how they acted. The exam taker does not know their opponents' names, faces, or quirk until they fight them. They have to pick the number of people to fight and just work up the list of opponents they choose from weakest to strongest. Izuku shocked everyone once again by requesting all available opponents. I want to see how far I go. I don't pass based on if I win each one anyway. I pass based on how you all judge my fighting abilities and how well I use my quirk or my quirkless fighting. So, I would like to fight them all from weakest to strongest. The exam proctors were shocked and radioed into the people in charge of the entire exam, the president of the commission, since they were on site for Izuku's exam when they saw it get scheduled. The president authorized it and was laughing. It seems the boy is like the father in giving me enjoyable entertainment with whatever they do. The man laughed as he sat in an observation room that was connected to the fighting room. Soon, the exam started and they all watched Izuku make easy work of the first 15 opponents that he fought. Overall, those people were in the lower ranks of heroes, but the fight started taking a bit longer the higher Izuku went, and there were 50 opponents total. It was about an hour later when the fights were over. Izumi Midoriya had beaten all 50 opponents total. The last 5 people were all in the top 200 of the entire nation ranks, which meant Izuku had trained quite well under Hisashi Midoriya, which didn't surprise the president of the American Hero Commission. He's not even tired overall. A bit exhausted, but still has a lot of fight in him. Likely a quirk that provides the increased stamina, thought the commission president. Soon Izuku moved on to the next section where he had to rush into a room and act as if he was responding to a rescue. Izuku did this part quite fine and was able to get all the points in this section as well. As such, Izumi Midoriya had passed his exam with flying colors and was granted his hero license, though the commission president had an offer to make which he believed they would be expecting from him, and they were. Third POV. Izuku came out of the exam and made his way over to his father and the 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗀𝗃, who were all waiting for him to finish. They saw him come out and noticed it had only been about 2 hours when the exam was set to take 3 hours total. They were worried that he had failed, but Hisashi knew his son had passed without a doubt. If he didn't, he would actually be concerned about someone interfering, if anything. Just as Hisashi had predicted, Izuku had passed the exam with flying colors and was granted his full hero license, since this was the exam for the full one instead of the provisional one, which you only obtained via a hero school, since that is where they allow you to gain experience before the full exam, and third parties could only pay to have the full exam done and not a provisional exam is done, since the commission didn't want random people running around with just a provisional license, which was slightly easier to get since they accepted a hero school to keep them in line. As the group was celebrating with each other and talking, Hisashi noticed that the Hero Commission of America president had started coming towards them. "Son, here comes the president of the commission. I believe he will make the offer that I warned you about. Are you sure you want to accept it?" Hisashi asked, and Izuku nodded his head and was sure he wanted to go that route, since it would allow him more privileges in the hero world and give him access to the likelihood of finding more powerful quirks. It would also help him if he ever ran into All Might on the job and All Might found out about who he was, since the special agents had special jurisdiction rights, which would complicate matters for Japan if they had any ideas of trying any legal moves on him at All Might's or Green Tornado's request. The president of the commission arrived next to them and requested a private meeting with Izuku and Hisashi, which they accepted. The 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃s would wait for the Midoriyas in a side room until the meeting was done, since they planned to go out to dinner to celebrate. After walking a bit, they arrived in the room and sat down. "Congratulations on passing Shadow Hero, Hunter. I quite like the name, though I wonder what inspired that name itself," asked the president of the commission. Izuku thought about what inspired him to make the name and then spoke. "Multiple things, as you know about our quirks. I have some inspiration from the quirk itself. I know very likely I will be used to stop villains from returning permanently if they have a dangerous quirk, either via killing them or removing their quirk, which limits their future actions. So Hunter, as in hunting people down and hunting new quirks down to add to the collection. The shadow part is because I plan to be mostly an underground hero type for a while until Stella graduates from a hero school. After that, I will likely start going more daylight, but still focuses on special operation missions that require a massive hitter or a sneaky entrance even during daylight. As such, I want to be a shadow that people don't really think about until they notice it, because let's be honest, you don't notice your own shadow until you look down at it or it's brought right in front of you if something makes it more defined to the point it catches your eye. I will be like that, unseen until the last moment, or I deem myself needed to be seen as a determinant to villains because getting your quirk taken would be one huge determinant to doing crime. Izuku said, and the commission president nodded his head at Izuku's words because they were true, and the commission president was happy that Izuku was mature and had an overall plan thought out. With your father involved in your life, I am sure he's already warned you and told you about the special agent program, yes? The president asked, and Izuku nodded his head at that statement. Good, if you have any questions then feel free to ask, but I am hereby formally inviting you into the special agent program. Do you have any questions about joining? He asked Izuku, and Izuku thought for a few minutes. Yes, I have some. As you know, I am with Stella, and I'm sure you are aware of my former family. In regards to Stella, would this program prevent me from becoming a daylight hero in the future if I decided to do that with her whenever she graduates in the future? Izuku asked, and the president thought it over for a few moments. Normally, we like the special agents to stay hidden for the most part. However, we could work around it and make you 2 licenses. One for your special agent position and a normal hero license. If you are doing anything that isn't for the special agent assignments, then just show your normal license, which would hide the fact that you're a special agent, stated the president, and Izuku thanked him for that. Overall, you would be asked to go on a mission that might include international trips if a case leads you out of the country or the UN requests you to go somewhere. Otherwise, you operate as a normal hero unless needed for special assignments. So I don't see anything that prevents you from working with her in the future, he stated, and Izuku nodded his head. Then he thought about Izuku's former family. That was a hotbed of a mess in his honest view. To be honest, your stepfather, mother, and half-sibling issue is a hotbed of a mess. However, it isn't something we can't handle since they haven't found you in all of these years, and unless you become the center of attention that international news picks you up, then they likely won't find you. Though a case might lead you to Japan, which would be an issue, and at that point, you will have to deal with them finding you. Even if they do find you, call my phone number at any time of the day, even if I am asleep, and we will send the paperwork renouncing your Japanese citizenship, which ties Japan's court's hands for the most part. They still might try something, but it will take time and a lot of work. By then, you could likely escape back to America where you would be protected easier. Even if you stayed for a case, with your quirks it would be hard for them to lock you down, and even then you being an official hero ties their hands as well, since as an official hero you are legally recognized as a legal adult even though you're underage for a lot of laws. You can even drink now since you have the full hero license, stated the president, and Izuku nodded his head in understanding. He thought it over and realized that unless All Might tried to physically stop him, then they couldn't do much against Izuku. Your father can't even step foot in Japan since they could legally arrest him if they can connect the crimes of 𝗵𝗃 to Hisashi Midoriya, which I fear All might figure a way out with Principal Nizu's help of UA. So, Hisashi, stop returning to Japan in my opinion and just have representatives do the work instead. They can't touch you in America since we would never authorize your arrest since we get far more benefits, and you've committed no crimes since you've turned over a new leaf, so we don't see any reason to allow them to since you provide a lot of tax money and benefits to the country, stated the president of the commission, and Izuku was glad at that moment his father had turned over a new leaf all those years ago and has a clean record since then. With all of that talked about, I accept the offer to join the special agent program since it would provide me more benefits to block them and allow me to operate more in the dark without others really knowing of me, Izuku stated, and the president said he would have the special agent paperwork sent to their family lawyer and the special agent license printed soon after. The meeting came to an end, and Izuku and Hisashi met with the Vermillions and informed them of Izuku accepting the offer to enter the special agent program. Stella told Izuku to be careful or else she was going to make him pay. Oh, how are you going to make me pay if I am not careful? Izuku asked, and both male adults rolled their eyes and looked at him. You screwed up, they both said at him, and he was confused until he turned to look at Stella and got the hint. She was glaring at him and then grabbed his ear and twisted it. Oh, I'm sure I can find my ways of punishing you, she said in a tone that sent shivers down Izuku's spine. 𝗧𝗵𝗲. I F up and I don't even know what she will threaten me with, Izuku thought as he felt some heat from Stella's hands. Come on. Stop heating my ears up, it's really uncomfortable. Izuku said as she just kept twisting his ear and using her fire to heat her hand up, which made his ears heat up, which only made it far more uncomfortable. The males just snickered at Izuku's plight until Izuku just gave up and submitted. Fine. I give. I promise I will be careful, my lovely 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗃. Izuku said in a pleasing manner that made Stella let go and just pout. Here you are just talking about not being safe and just going to leave me alone if you screw up in a battle. How did I end up with such an uncaring lover? She pouted with fake tears, but Izuku didn't care as he pacified her and apologized. She very quickly changed her attitude and smiled as making Izuku give in, and the male adults just whispered about him being whipped already, though Francis got smacked in the side by his wife who glared at him. Third POV. Izuku decided to take more quirks from his father to help him survive with being up almost all day since he would spend time at the business working, then part of his afternoon with Stella since he refused to cut time with her, and then he had hero work in the late afternoon early morning. New additions, Energy Siphon. This allows the user to siphon off energy from living things to replenish the user's own energy. Power Nap. The user can reap the benefits of a full night's rest in 30 minutes of sleep. The user can share this ability with someone if they maintain contact with them while both parties are asleep. Memory Recall. The user is able to recall anything that they have experienced. This allows them to never forget anything, and they only need to think of the topic to recall the memories. Visual Teleportation. This allows the user to teleport to any place that is within his visual range and he can clearly see. This costs the users stamina to teleport and requires more stamina if he teleports others with him. He combines this with his crow's sight to help him to travel to more complex places or further distances. In all honesty, Izuku thinks that the 3 new quirks that Izuku found from shifting through the 200 years worth of quirks are how his father has survived so long since they were so powerful. These quirks could help fuel his hyper-regeneration quirk and allow him to be effective in investigations. As such, with these new quirks, Izuku was no longer feeling the drain of pulling all-nighters after spending the day at the business or with Stella, since he could use Power Nap to sleep for 30 minutes and get refreshed on his energy and stamina. As the months had passed, Izuku had now turned 13 and he had handled a lot of small-time criminals that he had encountered throughout the city since becoming a hero. However, it seemed like today was going to be a troublesome day in Izuku's opinion. As he was moving throughout the city, he had sent all of the crows that he controlled out to scout all the areas around him. About 3 hours into his patrol, and it was now 4 a.m., Izuku was alerted by one of his crows that some weird creature was spotted attacking in the area around Times Square. Izuku quickly headed off in that direction because the person or thing that was fighting the other heroes and police was not going down easily, even though they were hitting it hard with quirks and bullets. It had easily lifted a tour bus and tossed it into a building, damaging it. Izuku arrived on site via visual teleportation and landed on one of the shorter buildings in the area. Izuku watched the movements of the creature and could observe that it had a brain sticking out. However, that isn't what freaked Izuku out the most. A feature of 𝗲𝗋 is more or less gaining a quirk vision view where they could see quirks inside of a person if they 𝗬𝗏𝐶H to that visual view. It turns everything black except the said quirks, and Izuku saw around 10 quirks all mangled together inside of the creature and couldn't tell what they were. Izuku dropped down and landed on a stoplight behind the heroes and police. An officer turned around and saw him and was about to ask who the hell he was, since Izuku wasn't really known even in the underground hero's eyes, but before he could, Izuku gathered all the shadows in the areas and created a vortex of 𝗬𝗏𝗶𝘃 to surround the creature, locking it into position. Even though it was locked down, it kept struggling and trying to break free of his grasp. Everyone was shocked that the creature had just gotten stopped and looked at where the officer was talking to and saw Izuku in his outfit with his fox mask on. Izuku pulled out his normal hero license and showed it to the police officer, whose eyes widened. Most of Izuku's information was hidden since he was registered as an underground hero currently, so it only showed his hero name and authorization to act. Thank you, Pro Hero Hunter. We were having trouble stopping it until you arrived. The officer called out, letting everyone know he was indeed a pro hero, though they wondered why he was so short. Izuku took his license back and moved towards the creature and examined it. It really does have multiple quirks that are butchered together. I don't even know if I could pull those quirks out of it. Someone did this without all for one, which means someone has figured out how to create weapons with multiple quirks. That is very bad. Izuku thought as he pulled his cell phone out. As he did that, he summed the shadows a bit more and crucified the creature so it can't move anymore. The creature screamed in pain and the heroes looked at him as if he was crazy for causing harm to the person. It's not human. At least not anymore. Get something to contain this thing now with large enough metals to keep it contained. Izuku said with his voice modifier on so people didn't know he was so young. Izuku then pressed a contact in his phone and it ranged. Hello, Hunter. May I know why you are calling so late or rather early in the morning? Asked the president of the commission. Hello, sir. I'm calling about a high-level threat. I need you to send a representative to handle a creature I just detained in Times Square. Police are finding something to keep it contained after I release it, but it needs to be secured better than they can do it. It has multiple quirks that weren't done via AFO. Someone has figured a way out to make bioengineered weapons with multiple quirks, and I don't know if I can pull the quirks out of it, and I won't try until we are in a private setting since I'm still in public. Izuku stated on the phone as he moved away from everyone else while still maintaining the shadows to keep it contained. Overall, it wasn't that strong, but the fact that someone made a multi-quirk creature that could easily deal with basic heroes was troubling. The line was silent for a few minutes. I'll have somewhere there. Tell the police to keep it contained in a container or something, or you keep it contained until the representative arrives. Don't let the creature out of your sight. You were right to call me right away about this since that is a huge issue. We need to figure out where this creature came from. I'll bring your father in the loop on this since he might know something from being as old as he is. The representative should be there in about 5 minutes since he is already close. He has read in already about you and your father. Stated the president of the commission as he hanged the phone up. Izuku then went back to the officers who had brought a normal police van. Izuku shook his head. No, that won't hold this. We need something better, but regardless, a representative from the Hero Commission will be arriving in about 5 minutes. This creature will be sent to a special location to imprison it. Izuku said, and they questioned how they knew this, and Izuku said he called the Hero Commission president directly and they looked at him if he was joking. Izuku just chuckled at their expression and soon the representative arrived after about 8 minutes. The representative saw the creature and paled a bit. He had made a few calls and asked Izuku to keep it contained for a while longer. About 10 minutes later a new vehicle arrived and it was a heavier truck with a steel caged box in the back with a place to lock in a person with large cuffs that should keep the creature contained. Izuku moved his shadows and made them coil around the arms and legs of the creature and moved it into the seat, and he used other shadows to close the metal locking devices inside. He pulled the shadows back slightly but kept them close enough to grab if it somehow broke free. After the creature started to try and break free, it was deemed safe since it still wasn't breaking out of the hold. Izuku got into the car with the commission official and followed the transport from behind where they went to America's version of Tartarus prison. Their most secure prison in America, which was said to be harder to break out of than Japan's most secure prison. However, unlike Japan's most secure prison, no one in America actually knows where America's most secure prison is located at. They all think it's Rikers Island, which they state is the most secured, but it's not. That's the second most secured one where a lot of top villains go to, but if they think they have a chance at escaping, they go to the hidden one. The hidden prison is accessed via an underwater tunnel, and the prison is located under the Governor's Island, which had been turned into a Hero Commission office publicly but in secret. It's where they monitor the hidden prison and other things for the heroes across America. If a prison escape is likely to happen, then the island can flood sections of the prison, drowning the people inside the said sections if the commission is forced to do it. After arriving, Izuku found his father and the president of the commission waiting for them. What a way to make your real big debut, Hunter. The news is already talking about the mysterious hero known as Hunter who hunts in the shadows. They are talking about how you handled the monster that many heroes couldn't do and have a partial image of you. It's a good thing you wear a mask or there goes your privacy, joked the president of the commission. Hisashi just congratulated Izuku for a good job, and soon they made it to the room that the creature was being held in. I can confirm what you said, son. This wasn't done via a quirk like ours from what I know. It's possible, but it looks mangled, like they were forced together. Not even when I forced a quirk onto someone with rushing did it turn out like this, and the last time I did that was 90 years ago. It looks like multiple DNAs mashed together which formed a mess of quirks. Hisashi stated, and the scientists that were read in on Hisashi and Izuku was making notes. A lot of the very important people in the commission knew of Hisashi, so they were just taking notes as he spoke since they knew he was experienced in what he was talking about. Izuku then touched the create and tried to remove one of the quirks, but it just ended up breaking apart and destroying the quirk. Interesting. I saw that happen. If we try to take a quirk, it breaks down. It's too unstable to be removed. I wonder what happens if we put a new quirk in. Copy a random quirk from me and put it inside of it. Any quirk will do, really. Hisashi said as Izuku performed the action. They watched it happen, and the quirk touched the others and bounced off but stayed inside. So it tried to be combined, but it rejected each other. But the quirk is still inside. I wonder if it can use it. What did you give it? Hisashi asked, and Izuku said a quirk that made it have a longer tongue. The scientist forced the mouth open as the creature tried to break free, and they saw that it didn't have a larger tone from what was observed beforehand. Try to take it back. Hisashi asked, and Izuku did, but it broke apart. It seems quirks that are put into this creature become unstable since it broke apart. That's good to know. Hisashi said. Izuku didn't want to try to copy a quirk out of it. I don't think it's wise for me to attempt to copy a quirk from it. It might kill me if it destabilizes all for one. Izuku said, and Hisashi agreed as well, so that test was off limits. They decided to start taking BLD from it and see if they could find any DNA matches in the system for who this might have been, but that would take time due to how many people are in the country or even possibly the world, since they aren't sure it was made in the country since villains can travel between countries. Izuku then remembered that he had a quirk called knowledge. I'm going to try knowledge on it. It might give us some clues. Izuku said, and Hisashi nodded his head. Izuku performed the quirk and screamed in pain as he backed away. Hisashi quickly moved to him, as did some doctors. What the hell? Izuku cursed out loud. They asked what was wrong, and Izuku looked at the creature. Going to tell you now. You're going to get multiple DNA hints. This is some experiment that is made of multiple humans. That's why the quirks are like that. Someone is conducting mass human experiments. I could only get so much information before the knowledge quirk went haywire due to the conflicting information from multiple sources. Izuku stated, and Hisashi nodded his head since it made sense. The president asked if he got any other clues, and Izuku thought it over. As it stands, I can tell you it wasn't made in the United States. Before I got cut off, it seemed like it was about to show a foreign name for the location where it was made. However, I couldn't see it fully before it cut off. I can say it was likely somewhere in Asia. We can likely limit it down once we get the DNA hits back. Izuku stated, and they all nodded their heads. They could only wait and let the scientists do their work. Izuku, though, was having a migraine from the knowledge quirk going haywire. Do you got a quirk to help with migraines? Izuku asked, and Hisashi nodded his head. Izuku copied the quirk, which was called Clear Head. This allows the user to negate any issues with their mind or issues revolving around their brain. Quirk list. Advanced all for 1 𝗵𝗃 quirk. This allows the user to copy, take, give, and combine quirks. Currently, there is no limit to the number of quirks that the user can hold. It takes about 1 minute to copy a quirk with physical contact. Other actions can be done within seconds. Hyper regeneration. This allows the user to use stamina to regeneration their body and wounds. Stamina booster. The user's stamina is recuperated at x2 their natural body rate. 𝗵𝗲 telepath. This allows the user to send messages to people that he considers close to or who he considers family. Geolocation. This allows the user to acquire the general location within 100 feet of a person that they are thinking of. Crow. This allows the user to communicate and order crows to do his bidding. Izuku could also connect his mind to the crows and see through their eyes. Though if the crows don't like him, then they can break free of his control through sheer willpower, though it's unlikely of it working. Knowledge. The user absorbs the knowledge of things once they come in contact with it. If they touch an apple, they know where it was grown from and what type of apple it is. Shadow 𝗵𝗃 combined quirk, pitch black and shadow minion. This allows the user to materialize any shadows with varying strength and form it to meet their needs. The user could make items like 𝗵𝗄𝗶𝘃𝗲 or weapons, clones made of shadows, wings out of shadows, or anything else that their mind can imagine. The user can even travel via the shadows since he is one with the shadows. Pitch black. This allows the user to control shadows, and the darker the shadows under control, the stronger they are. Shadow minion. The user is able to control their personal shadow and make it materialize as a physical form. Shock absorption. This allows the user to take kinetic energy and absorb it into his body and use it to boost their own strength. Velocity. The user can steal the kinetic energy from people and objects in motion to gain more speed while slowing the person or object down due to the stolen energy. Double strength booster. Grants the user of the quirk a doubling effect of their natural strength. The stronger the individual's body is, the stronger the doubling effect is of their strength. Color changer. This quirk allows the user to change the color of any hair on his body and allows him to change the color of his eyes as well. New quirks that Izuku added to his stockpile. Warrior replication. This allows the user to learn the fighting styles of others at a faster pace and adapt the fighting styles into one overall compact and efficient fighting style. This provides an overall edge in battle if the user engages in close quarters combat. No, this allows the user to negate the effects of other quirks upon himself if he decides to have it active. i.e., a lie detector quirk wouldn't work on him and ring as true if he had it active. Pain negation. This allows the user to lower the amount of pain they feel from injuries and allows them to push through during a battle. It can be turned on and off at the will of the user so they can make sure they aren't missing a wound that needs to be taken care of. Though the hyper regeneration takes care of Izuku's wounds. Mental restoration. This allows the user to restore an individual's mental state and repair damage to their brain. Energy siphon. This allows the user to siphon off energy from living things to replenish the user's own energy. Power nap. The user can reap the benefits of a full night's rest in 30 minutes of sleep. The user can share this ability with someone if they maintain contact with them while both parties are asleep. Memory recall. The user is able to recall anything that they have experienced. This allows them to never forget anything, and they only need to think of the topic to recall the memories. Visual teleportation. This allows the user to teleport to any place that is within his visual range and he can clearly see. This costs the user's stamina to teleport and requires more stamina if he teleports others with him. He combines this with his crow's sight to help him to travel to more complex places or further distances. Clear head. This allows the user to negate any issues with their mind or issues revolving around their brain.